welcome everyone. Yes, it's been an interesting week and we're all here to share community, share books, be with each other, and we're so excited that you're here with us. And my name is Lainey Mays, if you don't know me. Thank you. I am the lovely Emily Day from Macmillan, co-chair of the Adult Library Marketing Association, or ALMA. You might know us from our presentations virtually, but we have put on this amazing event for you. It's the Tristate event. It's our first one in person since 2019. Yeah. Okay. I'm feeling good. I'm excited. Everyone's here, and why not just get to the books? Let's go.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I am Melissa from Hachette. Yay. Thank you. So let's dig into some fiction, and then I'll move on to nonfiction. Oh, here's the schedule. Oh, and here's, yep, that's good. Okay, we're going to usher in the new year. Yes, great. These are upcoming titles that we've been talking about for a lot of 2024, and they're almost here. Mothers and Sons by Adam Hazlitt. Oh, this Adam, he knows how to reach in and grab my heart and stomp on it and then sometimes give it back to me. So you can vote for that on Library Reads until December 1st. And Alan Eskin, the Quiet Librarian, he's keen to do virtual events, and he's a perfect suggestion for your patrons looking for a new thriller author. And Nesting is for fans of Claire Keegan. This is an extraordinary debut that creates a devastating and suspenseful portrait of gaslighting and emotional abuse. It's so on trend. And even better, a triumphant story about family love and finding a new place to nest. And life hacks. I love this little alien. Before she thinks of herself as a little alien, the narrator is a lonely little girl living in Southeast England who doesn't understand the world the way other children seem to, and she begins to wonder, could there be others like her, and why who also feel like they're from another planet? Perfect for readers of Eleanor Oliphant, is completely fine, and Remarkably Bright Creatures. So, okay, Scott Turow. You guys, Scott Turow. There's like a TV series of it has Jake Gyllenhaal. Does everybody know that besides me? Oh, good. Okay, well then you might also know that there's a season 2 coming, and it's bringing a lot of new readers to Scott Turow's. I think that iconic legal thriller. I'm going to say, because he also wrote that 1L, and he's so nice. But I'll tell you about that during one of the breaks. He did a very nice thing at ALA in Chicago for me once. More on that another time. And that shouldn't sound like suggestive. It's not like that. It's not like that. So anyway, The Plot of Presumed Guilty, coming next year, for me, is another reason to completely say no to camping trips, but I will leave that to the reader. And Scott's new and longer-term fans will be richly rewarded with the way Scott weaves this story together. Trouble Up North is an irresistible mix of the rich setting of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I know we're like tri-state, but the Upper Peninsula is there if you think of Michigan as a mitten, right? Okay. Anyway, we're at the Upper Peninsula, and the power of a family's connection to the land, the tension between the locals and the recreational vacationers who are descending upon the community, and an impulsive act that sends a fractured family down a path to redemption. Told in a voice that is clever, thoughtful, heartrending, and humorous, this is an absorbing tale with an ending that emphasizes that at the heart of every strong family, no matter how fractured, is fierce love. And it's great for fans of Ron Rash and William Kent Kruger, and definitely has book club appeal. Okay, Jennifer Hay weaves the story of a complicated marriage and divorce, the bonds of sisterhood, international adoption, and a sexual secret and trauma that derails a family in her newest novel. The reader steps into Shanghai and also into a very broken family. Great for book clubs, and it is ripe for rich discussion like Ask Again, Yes, and The Bee Sting, but it's 400 pages shorter, so take that, Bee Sting. If you are one of the libraries that receive Library Journal's galley mailings, which for me is enveloped in a shroud of mystery. You may have already recently received a striking galley, but if not, let me know. I'm happy to mail more. Oh, this is the next book in Kennedy Ryan's Skyland series. Kennedy is determined to write for women from all walks of life and emphasizing their own agency. I know Kennedy has a lot of love in the library space already, but I can't say enough about how groovy she is. Fans love her steamy romances, her beautifully drawn characters, and complex family dynamics. It's great for readers of Colleen Hoover and Tia Williams, and for the record, I can't get enough of Kennedy's writing. I know I had to, right? Had to. Oh, The Devil Three Times. You guys, We are so excited about this book. It's changed names and I'm getting all sorts of confused. But here's the good news. This is coming next May, and we're printing galleys now. So I'm going to have a lot of galleys. We're going to talk about Ricky Fain, a lot of family story, and takes place in Tennessee. And we're all going to be hooked on this. And if you loved homegoing, this is for you. So galleys coming soon, maybe printing right now. The Night in the Moth. This is an epic new romance series from Rachel Gillig with characters that stay with you, as does her visually stunning new world. You know, people like romantasy. I think you know. Anyway, the drama figures on a prophetess who is forced on an impossible quest with the one infuriating knight who's beyond her sight, which could totally be a bummer. I mean, it has been in my case when that happens. So unless there's a delicious, slow-burning romance at the heart of the novel, perfect for fans of Jennifer Armentrout and Leigh Bardugo. And then this book is like making everybody in the office wild. It's a retelling of the Broadway show Six, or Henry VIII and his wives. So in this version, the wives are all still alive and in their own palaces. And then two queens become the unlikeliest of things, friends and allies, and the balance of power begins to shift. And together they uncover a dark and deadly truth at the heart of the magic that is keeping them all alive. Anne Boleyn and Jane Seymour's only hope of survival rests on uniting all six of the rival queens. Of course, Henry will never let that happen. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I think they're going to be printing galleys of that now, too. Oh, look, Annie's back. Thanks, Annie, for letting everybody in. Okay, don't take that out of my minutes. The Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery. Publicist by day, mystical practitioner by night. That sets the stage for this ghostly drama. Gwendolyn is busy being the best publicist in New York City, and she totally does not need to be caught up in the between the blurred lines of the human and the spirit world, but she can't deny that spooky things are happening, and incidents are derailing her life. So she must face the demons she's long left behind, or the spirit world will be unleashed, threatening her very existence and all of New York. Also very relatable these days. So The Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery is sensuous, funny, mystical, and is perfect for readers of Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and maybe I'm going to mispronounce this, so bear with me, Zakiya Delilah Harris. Okay, let's go to nonfiction. The Body is a Doorway. I can totally get on board for a memoir written by a poet. This is a searing portrait of a young woman exploring trauma, chronic illness, queerness, and more. The singular book uses both memoir and deep research to explore the intersection of these topics with the understanding of the natural world. Sophie is widely celebrated for her writings on these subjects. Here, for the first time, she weaves them together in a work that explores timely topics in a deeply personal way. Oh, Sophie. Okay. This other Melissa, yes, Melissa Radke, she writes about the women who raised us, made us, taught us to cook and clap back. It's the ones who prayed for us, raged at us, humbled us a notch or two when we needed it from a uniquely Southern point of view. It's filled with a hilarious cast of larger-than-life women, and why no one messes with Southern women in their hair. I guess that's true. You guys can tell me later. And why true crime and aqua aerobics bring us together. By the way, I love aqua aerobics. Okay, there's a nod to her faith, too. Okay, Bonnie is a longtime contributor to the New York Times and the best-selling author of Why We Swim, and the New York Times Book Review's Editor's Choice. It won every award that year, right? Now she's bringing her signature blend of science, culture, and immersive reporting and personal narrative to examine not just what muscles are, but what they mean to us. And she traces how muscles have defined beauty, how they've distorted it through the ages, and how they play an essential role in our physical and mental health. Bonnie was on a Library Journal Day of Dialogue panel 2 weeks ago. She was marvelous, and I'm fighting with LJ. Oh, you can tell them. I want them to send us the links to all the panels so we can share them, because they're great panels, and I just want them to live there. Anyway, that's things I'm doing while I try to change the world, one day of dialogue at a time. Okay, Big Dumb Eyes. This guy, look, his book is full of heart. He's going to make your readers laugh out loud and nod in recognition without being taxed intellectually, which seems like a good idea. Good to tune out regularly. Okay, I'm into this book. Yeah, The Ghost Lab tells the astonishing story of the wild ecosystem of paranormal profiteers. Yes, Thank you. And consumers through the events in one small town, but it also maps the trends of declining scientific literacy, trust in institutions, and the diffusion of a culture that has created space for armies of pseudoscientists to step into the minds of an increasingly credulous public. I'm going to fix it all here with the Ghost Lab. Okay, Jonathan Capehart is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, an associate editor, an opinion writer at the Washington Post. I've been told he's also on MSNBC and PBS, but my TV doesn't turn on anymore. In this memoir, Jonathan details growing up gay and Black in the 1970s and 80s, his unusual search for identity, his experience that covers like the Jim Crow South as well as modern media, and his ability to distill takeaways from adversity that can help one find success. Last title. This is not a science book that celebrates one big idea in a self-serious way. Look, it has like a flying frog. But it focuses on research that can seem at times ludicrous, pointless, or absurd, but nevertheless has huge payoffs for learning and offering a unique perspective on how science works. It means an opportunity for real people like me to have an adventure or misadventures in pursuit of their curiosity and passion. It's quirky, cool science that we get a kick out of. Okay, wait, before I get to you, I just want to say many of these slides are from our Spring Summer 25 list, meaning they hit library shelves May through August next year, and our publicity departments have determined which authors will be touring, and the Edelweiss event grids are available now. So that means if your library is interested in an event, you can fill out the grid with your proposal and plans. So catch me or Annie during a break if you want event grid access and you don't have it yet. So thank you, really happy to have you all here, and on to someone who lights up our lives, Chris Vakari.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. 5 years in the making, Book Buzz Tri-State. I am still Chris Vakari from Union Square and Company. Again, nice to be here with all of you. Before I reveal what's coming, a quick look back at what's out now. Place your holiday orders now. For Pride and Prejudice in Space, the mother of all rom-coms set in a universe where spaceships, gowns, and interplanetary travel are the daily norm. The Timekeepers by Allison Richman, a novel about love, loss, and friendship that transports us from 1979's suburban New York to war-torn Vietnam, recently named People Magazine's Book of the Week. Next week, we crack open Safecracker by Jesse DeRoy, a debut about Duke Duquesne, a thief who's got a dad in the joint, the sister in a coma, and shady feds who ask him to break into an unbreakable safe, but some things may be best left unopened. Get your tumblers ready for Safecracker. Little shout out to our cookbooks, What to Cook When You Don't Feel Like Cooking by Caroline Chambers. It published in August, got a dazzling star from Library Journal, a recent New York Times bestseller for 5 weeks. It debuted at number 2. She was on Good Morning America this morning. Our South, Black Food Through My Lens, a debut by Ashley Shanty out of recovering Asheville, North Carolina, with her look at Southern food through the lens of the Black experience, and Bodega Bakes from Bronx-born pastry chef and activist Paula Velez, a love letter to her Dominican heritage and NYC roots. Both got glowing starred reviews and TV coverage. We think we got two new classics on our hands. Moving to 2025 titles, Zoe Brennan First Crush. Author Laura Piper Lee will be here a little bit later to talk about this second chance romance, so more to come there. A Rebel Without Claws, book 1 in the Southern Charm series by Louisiana's Juliet Cross, a spinoff of her Stay a Spell series. Hit with romance readers hungry for light paranormal reads. Here, the bad boy Ronan Reed is a Texas werewolf with a hot temper. He runs with a dangerous crowd right out of the Double Deuce and Roadhouse, where after yet another bar fight and arrest, he leaves Texas to live with his uncle, the leader of a wolf pack in Louisiana, a place where werewolf cage fighting is legal. Ronan makes big plans here, but when he sets his sweet eyes on a sweet witch named Celine, his whole world stops. Celine knows she's in trouble, knows her family won't like this guy. So, question, why can't she stay away? The answer, obviously, is because forbidden romance is too tempting to resist. But when the other wolves start circling, how will they respond in this romantasy? The Woman in the Wallpaper by Laura Jones. The French Revolution is the backdrop for this. About the lives of three women who collide during the French Revolution. Sophie is a wallpaper factory worker. Her sister is Lara. At the factory, they notice something eerie about the illustrated wallpaper. The same mysterious woman appears again and again. This woman is the factory owner's former wife, who they discover met an untimely death years before and bears a resemblance to Lara. As Lara attracts the attention of the factory owner's son, she soon realizes that her life is mirroring the scenes illustrated on the wallpaper. As these occurrences become more unnerving, Lara begins to ask, is history repeating itself? And will she share the same tragic fate as the woman in the wallpaper? Poisoner's Tale. Giuliana Tofana is a notorious 17th century Italian poisoner that some think is the first female serial killer in history, brought to life in this feminist retelling. Again, she's a professional poisoner, which sounds like a tough line of work. She sold undetectable, slow-acting poison to women who wanted to murder their husbands because of domestic abuse or other forms of violence, weaving together the stories of the women that Julia helped, the men she killed, and those who wanted her dead. This is a tale of secrets, vengeance, and sin in the back streets of Rome, in a time when women had no voice and justice may be best served in a cup of broth. The Secret History of the Five Eyes. If you don't know what the Five Eyes is, it's not a new organization. It's an intelligence network established after World War II between the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. It's supposed to share signal intelligence, but recently it's become an integral part of operations as cybersecurity threats have grown more intense. Its achievements range from hunting Soviet spies during the Cold War to recent accusations against China of intellectual property theft, and the whole thing about the ban of TikTok on government devices. Award-winning writer Richard Kerbaj draws on interviews with intelligence officials, world leaders, and those always exciting, recently declassified archives to reveal the achievements and mistakes behind the alliance. Two Sisters by Rosie Whitehouse. The two sisters are the author's own mother-in-law and aunt. Their family was torn apart when the Nazis invaded France in 1940. After their mother was deported to Auschwitz, the sisters fled to an alpine ski resort village where they were rescued by a brave young doctor. Questions then arose, such as why did this doctor shelter them? Was their mother betrayed? Also, deeper moral questions about French complicity, duty to your country and to other people. In the end, she pieces together not only how the sisters were saved, but how so many others were lost. It was just called A Compelling Account of Survival and Remembrance by Booklist magazine. As I move into spring and summer, This Monster of Mine, the first in a series by Shalini Abesakara. At age 14, our lead character, Sarai, was found horribly injured at the bottom of a tower with only one memory of how she got there. She was pushed. 4 years later, she conceals her identity and returns to the scene of the crime as a prosecutor hell-bent on vengeance with a goal to secretly investigate her near death and ruin the man responsible. And though she must fight against the forbidden attraction growing between her and a sadistic judge, she can't help but shake the knowledge that his voice matches the only memory she has of her assailant. If you want a bloodbath of manipulation, deception, forbidden love, This Monster of Mine is for you. The Margaret Code. Who's Margaret, you may say, and why does she have a code? Well, it's 89-year-old Margaret Winterbottom, who's lived at the same spot her whole life. She knows all the neighbors and everything about them. But her memory may be a little spotty. In fact, she's sure that Barbara, her best friend next door, told her something important. But when Barbara is found dead in an apparent homicide, Margaret is determined to recover the missing memory. She and her grandson, who's now being blamed for the crime, begin investigating. And Margaret just knows that somebody wants her out of the way because she holds the key to solving this crime. She can only remember where she put the key. The Margaret Code is inspired by the author's relationship with his grandmother, who passed away from Alzheimer's when he was a teenager. Two books in May that yet to have finished jackets: A Showgirl's Rules for Falling in Love. The year is 1897, and the craze to be thin threatens to end the career of Evelyn Cross, a proudly heavy vaudeville performer. But that's not going to happen if the man behind the new entertainment palace of New York City has a say. He needs a star for his new show, and when he hears her sing, he knows she is the one to headline. Real feelings and sizzling romance develop between the two, and over trips to Coney Island, dinners and dancing at Tin Pan Alley, the two find themselves at the center of a culture war with prudish society on one side and Evelyn's community of working-class artists on the other. It's joy, struggle, and love, and a historical crossover at the turn of the 20th century. The Artist and the Feast. Jacket to come. 1920s Provence. It's a dry and dusty summer in France. A young journalist arrives at the farmhouse of a reclusive artist, hoping to be allowed to write an article about him. There he meets the artist's niece, who appears to do everything for this recluse, from cooking, cleaning, to putting up with his maniacal needs. But she's also watching everything around her, carrying scars from her past. It's as the journalist and she get to know each other that they start to reveal each other's scars to themselves and to each other. This is a period drama, a mystery, and a love story that challenges the way we view women and the art they create. Moving into cooking and lifestyle, Scratch That by Alex Traeger. If your smoke alarm goes off when you cook, or you accidentally added salt instead of sugar to your cookie dough recipe, you need to meet our charmingly clumsy and delightful author, Alex Traeger, who thinks we should let our messes guide us as a way to build kitchen intuition. You may already know Alex, and if you don't, you will know someone who does. Over 1 million followers on TikTok, 500,000 each on YouTube and Instagram. She's not a celebrity chef. She's not a food critic, but she knows the recipe how to go viral. One of her salad hacks went so viral that Cheesecake Factory got in touch with her and put it on the menu. Her book is Scratch That, a cookbook written around those happy accidents that occur in the kitchen but result in fun, flavorful, and approachable recipes. It'll inspire readers to test and believe in themselves and get messy. Each recipe is followed by a Scratch That section, which details possible ways each recipe could go awry and how to fix it, all of which she learned the hard way. She'll appeal to younger millennials, older Gen Z folks, or anyone who is cooking cautious. She recently announced her book on her social platforms to her combined 1.8 million followers. The response has been incredible. Her posts have racked up over 1 million views. The buzz is real, and fans can't wait to dive into her book. Lastly, Pizza from the Heart. If we were playing Family Feud and I asked 100 people what their favorite food was, I think most would say pizza. So here is Paul Giannone, a.k.a. Paulie G. At the age of 56 in the year 2010, he left his corporate career and launched his retirement plan. That passion is now Paulie G's, a thriving pizza business that started in Brooklyn, but has expanded around the country in 6 cities now. In this first cookbook called Pizza from the Heart, Paulie G and his wife, Mary Ann, who go together like sausage and peppers, share their secret, not only for making addictive pies at home, but the lessons they've learned in 40 years of marriage and 13 years of business partnership. One tip being, in food and love, watch the salt. Over 100 recipes for their insanely popular pizzas, plus other family recipes as well, pasta, salad, sides, and more. Books like Pizza Night and Pizza Czar have shown that the public has an evergreen appetite for pizza. We add our toppings to it with Pizza from the Heart. My friends, those are the books, and that's the way it is on 11/7/2024. Thank you for listening and being here, and on to our next presenter.
Hi, everyone. I am Lynette. I'm your new library marketing friend at Chronicle. Chronicle has never, I believe, in its history had an actual library marketer. So I am the first. It's a learning experience for us all. Come find me, come talk to me. It's amazing to be back in the adult library world. I am here for you. Before we get started on Spring 25, it's almost Thanksgiving. Chronicle happens to do a lot of cookbooks. This is new for me. I'm going to throw out a few bestsellers just to see if I can mix up your Thanksgiving tradition a little bit. You don't have to be one half of a couple to enjoy a couple cooks. Friends, roommates, even parents and kids can work together to cook up a storm with this genius book. This is such the opposite of the cookbook that Chris just presented. Each of the 100+ recipes split up the duties and assign roles to each partner. You can make your Thanksgiving more efficient and enjoyable from this bestseller, brought to you by the creators of the popular food blog, A Couple Cooks. Speaking of enjoyable, it's true what they say. Well, I think kimchi goes with everything. That includes turkey. Now you too can enjoy Thanksgiving the way I did growing up, with a bizarre mashup of American food and Korean side dishes known as banchan. This one's fast becoming a Chronicle classic. It includes fancified banchan dishes that I think will work for your Thanksgiving spread. Impress your Friendsgiving guests with kimchi potato salad, hot honey crispy tofu, or one of my favorite comfort foods, kamjatjorim, which is a potato dish. And then top it all off with equally fancified food from Goon with a Spoon, in which your guide is none other than America's sweetheart, Snoop Dogg. Here, he's teamed up with one of his besties, E40, the rapper, to bring you some bites from his kitchen to yours. It's actually a really cool multicultural mix of foods, which makes sense given Snoop's LA upbringing. We've got things like sticky Asian chicken wings, bacon cheeseburger lumpia, short rib adobo. You can let Snoop bring fusion to your feast. Okay, now we're going to jump into Spring 25. Together, spelled with an X, is a media group co-founded by kick-ass women's pro athletes Alex Morgan, Chloe Kim, Simone Manuel, and Sue Bird, and was named one of Fast Company's 10 most innovative sports companies. It focuses on sports storytelling rooted in lifestyle and youth culture. The latest project, Play It Forward, curated the stories of 25 women from all corners of the sports universe. The stories and experiences featured here are diverse, but what they have in common are superstars defying expectations and rebelling against inequality in big and small ways. They're overcoming barriers of race, age, socioeconomics, you name it. There is something about stories behind the sports that appeal to just about everyone. You don't have to be a sports fan to love a tearjerker sports-themed movie, for example, or the 30 for 30 ESPN series. Likewise, this is a collection that will absolutely uplift and inspire. Okay, and speaking of inspire, if you're into Instagram-worthy gardencore, this one's for you. Amber Grossman is the woman behind the popular account Black Girls Gardening, an online community connecting Black women gardeners and inspiring others to start a garden and give back to the land. You'll find first-person narratives of urban homesteaders, women caring for land that's been in their family for generations, women with indigenous ancestry, professional chefs, dreamers, activists, artists, all demonstrating how a gardening practice has the power to heal, educate, and connect. The profiles are interspersed with practical gardening tips, but above all, here's a celebration of the empowering gift of gardening, no matter how green your thumb is. All right. Our imprint, Princeton Architectural Press, features some of the best in architecture and design. This book is a particular gem on their list this season. In the late 1800s in the South, Black skilled artisans are said to have outnumbered white artisans 5 to 1, and they were doing this work, of course, creating against immense odds with little to no recognition. Atlanta-based designer and scholar Robella Wake spotlights just 10 of these groundbreaking works of Black craft and the artists behind them. You'll meet, for instance, ceramicist David Drake, an enslaved potter and poet in South Carolina, Anne Lowe, the couture dressmaker who designed, uncredited, Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress when she married JFK, and the celebrated quilters of Gee's Bend, just to name a few. The essays demonstrate the undeniable intersection of Black history and culture, Americana, and excellent design. Illustrations by artist Jonna Lynn Holland give the book a visual language and shine the spotlight beyond the individual objects as artifacts and onto the makers and their craft traditions. Okay, acclaimed essayist Nicole Grave Lipson looks to literature to help her navigate the innumerable nuances of being a girl, a woman with a body, a partner, a daughter, a mother, the list goes on. She might look to Kate Chopin's story, The Storm, to help her reckon with her mother's infidelity, and to Shakespeare's gender-bending heroine Rosalind as a North Star when she and her oldest daughter contemplate gender identity. My favorite chapter is a reflection on the author's transcendent bond with her best friend, and if you think that's fairly predictable territory, where else will you find Shakespeare, references to historical records of male and female bonds, Western philosophy, the Bible, and a Mean Girls critique all in one place? Fictional Mothers is a smart, thought-provoking collection of essays that takes readers on a journey to untangle truths and fictions from the stories we're told. Okay, I do have more cookbooks. Chronicle does a lot of them, I'm telling you. I'm going to point out just a few that stand out for me. Okay, so when I say hot date, I'm not talking about that kind of date. I'm talking about the ancient superpowered superfood fruit that has doubled as a viral sensation because apparently Snicker date bars, that's a thing, have gotten over 1.3 billion views on TikTok. The author draws inspiration from her Middle Eastern and Indian cooking background to feature 99 dishes interwoven with anecdotes about the date's cross-cultural historical significance. It's got poetry, the author's own watercolor images, and hand lettering, and so much more. I'm not kidding. I just saw the finished book in the office a couple days ago. It's got sprayed hot pink edges. They really just went out. I didn't pick the beautiful photos in this book to put up on the slide, but curried sausage rolls with a surprise inside just sounded delicious, which is why it's up there. Moving on to Your Pasta Sucks, more than a cookbook, just as Matteo Lane is more than a cook. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's not really a cook. He was named one of Variety's top 10 comics to watch. And on his popular YouTube channel, he's been guiding viewers through his favorite simple dishes while regaling them with his hilarious asides. Fans have always asked for recipes, and this book is the result. To be fair, the recipes are rooted in serious pasta knowledge, but presented with his signature sassy wit. And yes, I don't think you could see it. Maybe it's a good thing. He's in his tidy whities on the cover. Didn't know that was going to happen. That was covered before when the cover wasn't final. Buddha jumps over the wall. Did you know? In Chinese culture, I didn't know this, dishes are so culturally significant, they are often connected to a classic legend, a famous person, or a historical event. This graphic novel cookbook uses folklore and the author's family anecdotes to explore uniquely named dishes like husband and wife lung slices, heartbreak jelly noodle, and ignored by doggy stuffed buns. So to figure out what that is, you have to read the book. It also kindly includes a hack for those of us who are chopstick challenged and is all topped off with art by award-winning children's graphic novel illustrator Vivian Trong. Okay, and finally, fan favorites from Chronicle. Yay, we have another Jeffrey Brown book. The beloved author of Darth Vader and Son has crossed over into the MCU with his latest X-Men Days of Future Fun. The Art of Elio. If you haven't seen the trailer for Elio, this is another gorgeous otherworldly misadventure by one of the geniuses behind Coco. So my bar for this film and this book are really high, as yours should be as well. And the third book in the Dumb Bird series is the worst one yet. I love a good author origin story. The one for Matt Crott can be traced to a really unhappy experience he had with a 4th grade bird report. We've all had to do those. 40 plus years later, he's sort of getting his revenge. We have the Dumb Birds books, which feature his drawings of real birds everywhere, as well as actual facts about them, sort of. Matt doesn't consider himself a birder or a bird watcher. He is a bird critic. And that is it for me. My contact info is on the slide. Thank you for listening. I think I'm passing this on to Lainey.
Me again. Did you miss me? I'm back. Okay. Hi, Lainey Mays for HarperCollins. If you want to know anything about anything we offer, you go to librarylovefest.com. We have our offerings here. Writers to Watch, I do want to highlight because I'm going to talk about it later. It's a monthly author series at nighttime, and you can go see all the archive, but sign up on Crowdcaster Facebook, and you can join us and hear from authors. It's really fun. We are there to foster conversation, and you never know where it's going to go. So first is Famous Last Words by Jillian McAllister. We had Jillian on our last Writers to Watch, so go back and watch it. She is the author of Reese's Book Club pick and New York Times bestseller, Wrong Place, Wrong Time. This is another addictive thriller. It kind of reminds me of like Jocelyn Jackson, very domestic thriller. This is a woman who is at the crux of what would you do? Like book clubs will really find this interesting to talk it through. So after months of maternity leave, Camilla's returning back and has a new infant daughter, and her husband is not there when she wakes up for her new day back. She has a weird cryptic note. And then it starts, breaking news. There's a hostage situation developing in London, and the police arrive telling her Luke is involved, her husband, but he's not a hostage, he's the gunman. And she doesn't know what to do, and she's the only one who knows about this note. And so it goes back and forth, the chapters do, between her and the hostage negotiators' point of view. And so it's crazy great quotes. We have Jodi Picoult, Lisa Jewell, Sophie Hannah, Emily Henry, just such great quotes on this one, and I hope you check out our Writers to Watch. And then just quickly, I want to talk about some thrilling reads. So we have The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Finders coming to Harper. It's our first book with him. He's very well lauded, but this is a spy novel set in the years before Putin's invasion, of Ukraine, and deeply informed by the author's expertise in Russia. He has, it's just like a really interesting dive and kind of relevant, and he was on Writers to Watch with Jillian, so you can hear from him as well. Then we have Chloe. I feel like all I have to say is New York Times bestseller, Connie Briscoe, domestic thriller, retelling of Rebecca. Sold, beautiful cover. And then we have Detective Auntie by Uzma Jalaluddin. So this is the author of Much Ado About Nada, 3 Holidays and a Wedding, and more. And a woman kind of swoops in when her 30-something daughter is accused of murder, and she sees maybe some more crimes are coming, because who's better to pry answers from unwilling suspects than a meddlesome auntie? And then we have Summer in the City by Alex Astor. So you might know Alex Astor from Lightlark. She's a best-selling author. That's her adult debut. 27-year-old screenwriter Elle has a chance to write a big-budget movie set in New York City. She hates New York City because it's just not the city for her. And she's had writer block for months, but she's like, oh, I got to go back and do some research. And she ends up in this beautiful apartment to like perfect circumstances to write with this new neighbor who happens to be a billionaire bachelor. Billionaires are so big now in rom-coms. And they had a hookup 2 years ago and they don't get along. And so now forced proximity. And New York is like a city itself here. They decide maybe they can work together to get what they want through for their careers. And then maybe they'll fall in love. It's like enemies to lovers, back to enemies to lovers again. And this, like I said, the city is a character in itself. Like I feel like Nora Ephron movie, you know, New York it shines through. And then lots of tropes too in this one. And then the In Between Bookstore is a Virginia Stanley favorite, so go talk to her about it later. But this is another adult debut, and it's kind of a whimsical and healing novel about a trans man in New York who, almost 30, laid off, broke, moves back to small Illinois hometown, and walks into the bookstore they worked at in high school, and slips through time to come face to face with his pre-transition teenage self. Lots of answers and questions, I'm sure, going there. And Edward is also on Writers to Watch, so go hear directly from Edward and talk to Virginia about it later. I'm sure she would love to talk about it. So Boxcar Librarian by Brianna Labuscus. So Brianna is the USA Today bestselling author of historical novels, The Librarian of Burned Books and The Lost Book of Bonn, as well as 9 thrillers. And so she always has like libraries and books in her books. And this is a different era for her. It's set in World War II during the Great Depression, when it's threatened that a potential political scandal will surface. Works in Progress administration editor Millie is sent off to Montana, and while she's there, she's going to work on travel books. These books are part of the American Guide series, and they're created to provide writers with things to do during the Depression. And when she arrives, she's entranced by a mystery of a local librarian and a boxcar library, which is a converted mining train that brings books to ice. It's a bookmobile, essentially. And years earlier, Alice Munro founded this library, and Colette Duran, a miner's daughter, staffed it. And their trip out, only Alice returned. So Millie sets out to find out what happened to Colette. It's based on a true story and books about books. It's timely. There's a lot of info about workers' rights and union organizing and labor movements in the U.S., and it's going to have a hardcover edition as well. Then we have just another historical fiction quickly is The Girl from Greenwich Street. This is by Lauren Willig. It's described as Law and Order 1800. It's based on a true story of Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. They had to work together to save someone from the gallows, and so it's a historical version of that. Then we have House of Blight by Maximin Martineau. You might know the author from the debut Kingdom of Exiles, and this is the first of a new Gothic fantasy duology. So it's about a threadmender, Adira. She can help save people's lives, but only at the cost of her own. And her brothers attract this incurable virus, the Blight. It kills people in town, and it's too strong. No one knows what to do. Can we pull any ties from current? I don't know, but maybe good for book clubs as well. So her brothers are sick. She doesn't know how to save them. She's not strong enough. And so she makes a deal with the Fae in town, and she goes and escapes to their very dark manor. It's like crumbling, and it's very cool to read about that part. But she doesn't really trust them, and they don't really trust her powers. And so when secrets start to come out, it gets really interesting. There's a slow burn fantasy, accessible world building like Sarah J. Maas or Rebecca Yarros. And there's like proximity trope, and it's a super fun read, but I really do think book clubs would really like to talk about it just for the ties to current times. Alexa Martin said, the romance every reader needs on their shelves. And then just quickly, this book has captured me. We can talk about it later. I'm not going to go into it, but Capital of Dreams by Heather O'Neill, just a delight of a novel. It's set in a fictional war-torn country as a little girl makes her way across. Meditations on art and resilience and home, and it's got a talking goose. So come talk to me about it later. The Girls with Long Shadows by Tennessee Hill. So this is a debut. It's about identical triplets, baby A, B, and C, who are welcomed to the world, but their mother is ushered out. They're nameless. They go to live with their gram, and they kind of are raised on this crumbling golf course in Texas, and they help work it. Now, the wrong boy has kissed the wrong baby A, B, or C, and secrets are out. And so you see them grow up, and you see this like hypnotic. Anyway, I'm not going to say this. Lyricism, that word. Hypnotic. There you go. Lyricism in this read as they're coming into this teenage angst, and it might turn lethal, and it's based a little on this true crime that occurred in Odessa, Texas in the 50s. It's, beautiful and difficult relationships, especially among sisters, and there's a lot of great themes to dive into. And then we're so excited, Where the Rivers Merge, Mary Alice Monroe. This is the first of 2 books. We're happy to welcome Mary Alice to the Harper family as well. So first of 2 stories. This one's is 2 time periods, 1908 and 1988. We have Eliza at the beginning of her life. She's into conservation and riding her horses and on this big estate of her family, and she just really loves life. She's not set by those patriarchal terms that want to bind her. And so this is kind of cut short by the Great War. And then we go into the future, 1988, and she's 88 years old, and she wants to retire and give her home over to conservation, and her son has different thoughts. So you get like this succession type scene at the beginning. It really draws you in. And it's a dramatic and sweeping, multi-generational, and it's going to be a great setup for the next book, and just like the love of the Low Country. And then we have 2 book club reads. We have How to Sleep at Night, which is a family torn apart by political divide. We have Jennifer Weiner, the Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits, another person we're bringing to Harper. We're so excited. It's 2 sisters in a band, and they break up, and it's like the history of that over 2 decades. And then I am ending on a little bit of a serious note, some nonfiction. I think things that are really important. So we have Trust Your Mind by Janara Nierenberg, widely known as a neuroscience, innovation, and sensitivity leadership speaker, host, and founder of the Neurodiversity Project. And this is all about the psychological landscape of groupthink, cancel culture, and how the phenomenon has created this culture of self-censorship, offering a path to equitable communication for all. So she's breaking down how we've just become so divided, and we have this hysteria and backlash of anything anyone says, and how can we come together and really speak and communicate? Again, I thought it was a book that we all kind of need right now, and something we can sit down and start conversations, and she's the perfect person to do it. And there's hope in this read. It's not really dark. And just quickly, Imani Perry, National Book Award winning author. This is all about the color blue in the African diaspora. It's really fascinating. A lot of beautiful artwork to talk about. And then we have Alison Bechdel, Spent. It's a comic novel that is it's from the author of Fun Home. It's really about her life, but through comic and a little auto fiction. This one's really exciting. We're super excited for a comic from Alison Bechdel. And then you're going to hear from Lynn Steger Strong today, so stick around for our author chat. Okay, I think I'm in time. Done. Handing it over to Katie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm Katie Vaughn. I'm the marketing manager for Bloomsbury and our adult trade team. I'm really excited to share some of our upcoming titles for the rest of fall and then winter 2025 with you. It's a really awesome list. My email is here. It's also on the handouts, so please feel free to reach out to me to request any of the books I mentioned or just to say hi. Would love to hear from you. But for now, we'll jump right in. And we'll start with a title that just recently hit shelves that is making a big splash for the holidays. This is The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke, the beloved and best-selling prize-winning author of Piranesi. This new, beautifully illustrated short story is a treasure that's perfect for the holiday season and for all fantasy readers and fans of Susanna's work. It follows an unusual girl who can talk to animals and trees, who encounters a strange figure in the woods while walking one snowy afternoon. Set in the world of Clarke's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, it also features an afterword from the author about how she came to write it. Fun fact, she was very inspired by the music of Kate Bush. And Reactor Magazine says that The Wood at Midwinter is the perfect bite of everything Clarke does best, wrapped in gorgeous illustrations by Victoria Sawden, glorious. And Locus Magazine calls it a lovely fable. The narrative voice echoes the storytelling and cadences of writers from Andrew Lang to C.S. Lewis. Then in November, in just a couple weeks, we have another perfect holiday read and a quintessential book club pick, Time of the Child by Niall Williams, the author of the beloved bestseller, This Is Happiness. This latest book is a compassionate and life-affirming novel about the Christmas season that transforms the small Irish town of Faha. In the Advent season of 1962, Ronnie and her father, the town doctor, have their lives turned upside down when a baby is left in their care. Charming and heartwarming with starred reviews from Kirkus and Booklist, who calls the book an ode to love, this is a winter must-read, beloved by Ann Patchett, who says, "I am such a fan of Nile Williams." And if anyone is a fan of the music of Hozier, he is also a devoted fan of Nile Williams. And then in December, we'll have A Century of Tomorrows. Acclaimed cultural historian Glenn Adamson takes readers on an intellectual thrill ride through the kaleidoscopic story of futurology, with accounts of self-proclaimed futurologists like Buckminster Fuller, as well as an eclectic array of other visionaries who have influenced our thinking about the world ahead, like Octavia Butler and Ursula Le Guin, Marcus Garvey, Timothy Leary, and more. The book offers an illuminating account of how the world was transformed by the practice of futurecasting. And then on the next slide, we have a fantastic book, What to Do When You Get Dumped, A Guide to Unbreaking Your Heart by mother-daughter author-illustrator duo Susie Hopkins and Hallie Bateman. When Susie's husband of 30 years unexpectedly left her to pursue an old flame, her grief was so overwhelming that she thought her own heart might stop. In this new book, she charts a path to healing, offering the wisdom to emerge from a breakup smarter, stronger, and with the unshakable knowledge that you are worthy of lasting love. Perfect for readers experiencing any form of heartbreak or readers trying to support those who are facing loss, this is a heartwarming guide that best-selling author Emily Henry deems like a warm hug from your best friend. If you don't already follow Hallie on Instagram, I highly recommend you check her out. Her illustrations are brilliant. And as a reminder, the Library Reads deadline for this one is coming up soon on December 1st. And then I skipped Cold Kitchen, sorry about that. In early January, we have Cold Kitchen by Caroline Eden, which is a really beautiful, cozy, thoughtful memoir recalling food and travel in Eastern Europe and Central Asia from a basement Edinburgh kitchen. It features a delicious recipe at the end of each chapter. Join Caroline as she cooks from her travels, reflects on past adventures, and contemplates the kitchen's unique ability to tell human stories, all while accompanied by her beloved dog. Hauntingly honest and at times heartbreaking, this is a memoir with the smell, taste, and preparation of food at its heart. And in their starred review, Kirkus says Eden gently invites readers into those other worlds and graciously into the warmth of her fragrant kitchen, a lyrical and captivating memoir. And then we have The Loves of My Life, a stunning revelatory memoir of a lifetime of gay love and sex from the legendary author Edmund White. In this peerless memoir, the 85-year-old paterfamilias of queer literature recounts the 60-plus years of sexual escapades that have inspired his many masterpieces. With his signature honesty, irreverence, and wit, he paints an indelible portrait of queer history in America and abroad in a way only someone who has lived through it can. John Irving says the story of Edmund White's sex life reads like a beautifully crafted, very moving, and very funny novel. And in their starred review, PW says, with his trademark irreverence, White celebrates more than 6 decades of sex in a candid memoir that doubles as an indispensable work of queer history. Delightfully raunchy and affecting, this steamy account is full of pleasures. And my personal favorite quote is from Jamie Attenberg, who calls the book balletic in its horniness. If you feel compelled to nominate, the Library Reads deadline for this one is December 1st. And then on the next slide, we have Mutual Interest by Olivia Wolfgang Smith, an unputdownable queer love story that takes place at the turn of the 20th century. Our main character, Vivian, is desperate to flee her origins in Utica, New York, so when she meets Oscar, a middle manager at a soap company, she finds a partner she can guide to build the life she wants. Not least because, more interested in men himself, Oscar will leave Vivian to tend to her own romances with women. As they begin to build their empire, though, they become entangled with Squire Clancy, scion of an old American fortune whose love affair with Oscar soon complicates the relationship. Exposure threatens, and all 3 partners are made aware of just how much they have to lose. In their starred review, PW says Wolfgang Smith explores tensions in the private lives of 3 queer misfits turned business titans in her stunning latest. Her sharp, sardonic narration brilliantly brings to life both the Gilded Age and her unforgettable protagonists. It's a virtuosic performance. And the Library Reads for that one is January 1st. And then we have The Dark Mirror by fan favorite fantasy author Samantha Shannon. This is the highly anticipated 5th novel in her best-selling series, The Bone Season. And I won't spoil too much of it for you, but our scrappy heroine, Paige Mahoney, is back and everything is about to change. She's outside the Republic of Scion for the first time in more than a decade, but she has no idea how she got to the free world. Half a year has been wiped from her memory. Completely immersive and heart-pounding, this is a must-read for all fans of epic fantasy, devotees of Samantha Shannon and the Priory of the Orange Tree, and eager followers of The Bone Season. The Washington Post says this latest installment is real entertainment. Shannon has continued to build on her imagined world with intricacy, and Paige's voice comes through to deliver a suspenseful story. And then on the next slide, a book I'm very excited about. This is The Hymn to Dionysus by cult favorite author Natasha Pulley. This is a mythological retelling like you've never seen before, tackling the story of Dionysus, the Greek god of ecstasy, revelry, and ruin. In her masterful and propulsive prose, Pulley weaves a captivating queer love story between Phaedros, a soldier raised in a brutal Greek legion, and Dionysus, a blue-eyed witch whose presence seems to beget riots and unrest wherever he goes. Full of magic, conflict, romance, and tender humanity, this is a perfect book for all readers of mythological tales, fans of complex characters, and for those looking for a very new and unforgettable take on the classic retelling format. Luna McNamara, the author of Psyche and Eros, calls The Hymn to Dionysus a dazzling labyrinth of a book that pulls you in with both hands. Pulley's wild and charismatic Dionysus is sure to win your heart, and Phaedros' indefatigable spirit and wry humor will keep readers glued to the page, a fitting tribute to the god of divine madness. And the library reads deadline for that one will be February 1st. And then on this last slide, we have all of these fantastic titles on deck as well. A very topical read first, Money, Lies, and God, is what Congressman Jamie Raskin calls an indispensable citizen's guide to the anti-democratic MAGA right in America, written by acclaimed author and reporter Catherine Stewart, who also wrote The Power Worshippers. Shots Heard Around the World is the definitive account of the Revolutionary War and its monumental legacy, written by celebrated historian John Ferling. In The Golden Road, William Dalrymple, author of The Anarchy, draws from a lifetime of scholarship to highlight India's oft-forgot position at the heart of ancient Eurasia. And in Death is Our Business, John Lechner takes us to key places where the Wagner Group fought, interviewing members, veterans, and victims to deliver a shrewd sense of how Russian mercenary forces operate. And then finally, in The Accidentals, the International Booker shortlisted author of Stillborn, Guadalupe Nettle, offers a powerful collection of stories about characters coping with estrangement, isolation, and the unknown. Translated by Rosalind Harvey, the stories follow 8 characters who are each in their own way lost and wandering, revealing humanity's universal longing for connection. And that's it for Bloomsbury. Thank you guys so much for listening. Do reach out to me via email.
Hi, I'm Deb Seeger. I'm the publicity director here at Grove Atlantic. You can find all my contact information on the slides and on the handouts we gave you. Please reach out to me at any time if you want galleys, author events. Everything's up on Edelweiss and NetGalley. Our event grids will be up as well. Before I jump into actually the winter and later spring titles, 2 things I just wanted to mention, which I just decided to mention. The Booker Prize is being announced on Tuesday, and we're really excited to have Samantha Harvey's Audible as a shortlist. This is an beautiful meditation. Thank you. A meditation on our planet and life through the eyes of 6 international astronauts circling the planet within a 24-hour period. Also, tomorrow, Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These hits the screens, big screen, starring Cillian Murphy. I got to see this movie last week. It is beautiful. It really stays true to the novel, and it's not bad watching Cillian Murphy for an hour and a half. But going into the winter, the first title is David Wright Falladay's New Internationals, which is coming out in January. This is David is the author of the acclaimed book Black Cloud Rising, and he wrote this new book, The New Internationals, while he was a Coleman Fellow at NYU. He delivers in The New Internationals. He delivers a nuanced, powerful, and sharply realized story. This is an unique work of historical fiction that vividly captures Paris just after World War II, where it is alive with intellectual fervor with the likes of Frantz Fanon, James Baldwin, and many others. It also captures the incredible jazz scene that is happening in Paris at the time. But at the heart, this is a love story, and it really looks at Celia, who is a young Jewish girl who has just moved to Paris. She's really developing her own sense of her political ideals, and she falls in love with Seb at a communist youth conference where Seb is from West Africa, and he's also starting to kind of think about his roots and past. But it all comes together. They go in and out and falling in love. But really, it is really about the hopes and dreams or the possibilities of what could be. Next slide. The next book is by Francis
Lauren Francis Sharma. She is the author of the Book of the Little Axe, which was nominated for the Hearst and Wright Legacy Award. This is a riveting novel with the sharp edges of a thriller about the abuses of history and the costs of revenge, set between Washington, D.C. and Johannesburg, South Africa. With early praise from Angie Kim, Rebecca Mackay, Shochi Gonzalez, Matt Johnson, and Karen Slaughter. The novel is inspired by Francis's time in 1960, when she was in South Africa in 1996, as she was witnessing and what she learned while participating in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings. The story opens in 2018 in Washington, D.C., as Prudence is going to dinner with her husband. He's going to introduce her to a new colleague, and when they get to dinner, she realizes that this is a man from her past from South Africa who has come to find her and begins to threaten everything that she holds dear. Next up is 33 Place Bergman by Alice Austin. Alice, this is a debut. Alice Austin is a filmmaker, and you can really see this in the prose and the imagery that she brings to this novel. It's a love story, a mystery, I can never say this, philosophical puzzle told in the singular voices of the resident of a Beaux Arts apartment building in Belgium on the eve of Nazi occupation. This is already an Indie Next introduced selection, and we're hoping for a library read selection as well. That's due February 1st. I really love this novel. It has already received blurbs from Christina Baker-Klein, Jessica Shattuck, and our own Abraham Verghese, author of Covenant of Water, who wrote 33 Place Bergman is set in the turmoil of the Nazi occupation of Belgium. Austin's device of using one apartment building is its memorable tenants, and their individual transformation is brilliant. A compelling and beautiful read. So many writers now are writing speculative fiction or dystopic fiction. And what I think Alice really has done here, she's gone back in time and into our history to kind of explore what's happening. This is perfect for readers who love Amor Towles, Anthony Doerr, and Anne Brissett's The Postcard, though I would say it's a lot lighter than The Postcard.
With their infinitives, the Washington Post, especially their Metro writers. But I don't. I'm not.
Don't know what that is. What? And next up, coming in April, The Fact Checker. This is a hilarious send up to a certain magazine, but also the green markets of New York City and the food scene as well in the early 2000s. This really, I have to say, this book really saved me through this fall. It is one of the funniest books I've read in a long time. It started out like any other morning for The Fact Checker. The piece, Manville Green, didn't raise any red flags. There was more pressing stories that week, it being 2004 in New York City. If you remember, in 2004, all we were thinking about was the war in Iraq, the Bush administration, I guess. Manville Green was a light, brizzy look at the local farm called New Egyptian, whose Rampopo tomatoes were quickly becoming the summer's hottest produce. At first glance, the story seemed straightforward, but one line made the fact checker pause. A stray quote from the New Egyptian volunteer named Sylvia, making cryptic reference to nefarious business at the farmer's market. People sell everything here, she alleged to have said. It ain't all green. Austin is a former fact checker at the New Yorker. He's also been fact checking for many magazines in the media. But I think the funniest parts are really when the fact checker is calling people to fact check their pieces. There's a one line where he's like talking to Tony Curtis, and Tony Curtis is very blue, and it's very, very funny. Sorry, I just lost my page. And then I just wanted to tell you about a bunch of crime fiction. We have a lot of crime novels at Grove, and these are just the things that are coming up between December and February. First up, we're really thrilled to have William Boyd come to Grove with Gabriel's Moon. Boyd returns to the world of espionage that he explored in his best-selling novels, Restless and Waiting for Sunrise. For readers who love Mick Herron, this is William Boyd's most exhilarating novel yet. The novel has received starred reviews from PW and Kirkus. Bradford Morrow returns with The Forger's Requiem, coming in January, a gripping literary thriller that brings readers inside the world of expert forgery and generations of dark family secrets, all with forged Mary Shelley's letters. Also in January comes Henry Porter's Enigma Girl. He's an internationally bestseller author who's filling the gaps left by Len Deaton and John Le Carre. It's a propulsive espionage thriller for fans of Daniel Silva, Olin Steinhardt. This meet disgraced MI5 agent Slim Parsons, a character who, like Elizabeth Salander, will sear your soul. And lastly, coming in February, Dion Meyer, who we hadn't had a novel from the South African writer in a long time. He has a devoted, growing following with avid fans across the crime community, including luminaries such as Stephen King, Michael Connelly, Tess Gertison, and Tom Perry. He's back with Leo, a new novel starring his beloved, decorated yet flawed detectives, Benny Griesel and Vaughn Cupio, who must put their careers on the line to find the link between 3 seemingly unrelated homicides in a corrupt South Africa. I think we have a theme. It is said in a corrupt South Africa, the criminals are as likely to be in government or even in the police as on the streets. Again, that's what we have. You can find me anytime online or an email. And I just really want to thank you for all that you do. We're here to support you in any way.
Well, I'm Pamela Oste. I'm a senior marketing manager with HTP Books or Harlequin Trade Publishing. Next slide, please. And we'll begin today with Sisters in Science. So Olivia Campbell has a knack for writing unputdownable nonfiction as the author of the best-selling Women in White Coats. In Sisters in Science, she tells the remarkable true story of 4 female physicists who were in the middle of making groundbreaking discoveries when the Nazis took power and forced them to flee Germany. When they landed in America and elsewhere in Europe, they revolutionized the field in their new nations and inspired the next generation of women scientists. Sisters in Science is Hidden Figures meets Oppenheimer and will be perfect for your patrons looking for a STEM title, hidden history, and narrative nonfiction. And now next slide, please. Next up, an exciting debut in historical fiction, Jane Yang's The Lotus Shoes is perfect for fans of Pachinko and Banyan Moon. It follows 2 young women from very different backgrounds. Lin Jing, a woman from an esteemed family, and Little Flower, her talented maidservant, as they navigate their limited realities as women in 19th century China. Little Flower has bound feet, uncommon for a maidservant, and she's also gifted at embroidery, a skill associated with women of fortune. Resentful of her talents, Lin Jing does everything in her power to prevent Little Flower from escaping. But when scandal strikes the family, both women are cast out to the celibate sisterhood. With echoes of Lisa C. and Amy Tan, The Lotus Shoes eloquently navigates complex issues of class, female friendship, survival, and the rigidity of ancient customs. Next slide, please. Is she a wealthy heiress or London's greatest con woman? It is the grandest wedding of the Victorian London season, and con woman Quinn LeBlanc has 5 days to pull off her most ambitious scheme yet: trap an eligible duke in marriage and steal the fortune of the richest family in England. The Queen of Fives is by Alex Hay, who was the author of The Housekeepers, and he brings his signature wit and humor to this novel. This is perfect for fans of the Christie Affair and anyone who misses Downton Abbey. Next slide, please. A powerhouse author on our list that needs no introduction is Pam Jenoff, author of the New York Times bestsellers The Lost Girls of Paris and Codename Sapphire, and so many more. Pam returns with her most riveting novel to date, Last Twilight in Paris. It's London 1953, and Louise is still adjusting to her post-war role as a housewife. At a secondhand shop, she discovers a necklace in a box with the name of a department store in Paris. Louise believes she has seen that necklace before and that it holds the key to the mysterious death of her friend Franny during the war. Following the trail of clues, Louise sets out to Paris, where she discovers the dark history of Levitan, a once glamorous department store that was converted into a prison camp during the Nazi regime. Both a gripping mystery and an unforgettable story rooted in history, Last Twilight in Paris will move you. Next slide, please. Next up, we have Mallory O'Meara, who's no doubt familiar to many of you as the award-winning and best-selling historian and writer of The Lady from the Black Lagoon, Girly Drinks, which won a 2022 James Beard Award, and Girls Make Movies, which was a 2023 Junior Library Guild selection. Mallory is also the co-host of the literary podcast Reading Glasses. Daughter of Daring is the first ever published biography of Helen Gibson, widely regarded as the film industry's first professional stunt woman. Helen was the first to ever drive a motorcycle over a moving train, a stunt pulled by Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. The story of Helen's pioneering legacy shines a light on the unsung history of Hollywood stunt women and the crucial shifts they brought to women's visibility and work in cinema. Next slide, please. Library Reads Hall of Fame author Lisa Unger is back with Close Your Eyes and Count to 10, a novel that can be best described as Squid Game meets Survivor. It's a riveting thriller about a high-stakes game of extreme hide-and-seek, featuring a motley crew of characters from a single mother to a larger-than-life adventure influencer. It's set in an abandoned hotel on a secluded island, so it's got this eerie atmospheric sense of claustrophobia. Lisa loves to expose the dark flaws of humanity, and in this one, she looks at the extreme things people will do for a like or a follow. There are lots of twists and turns, edge-of-your-seat suspense, compelling and richly drawn characters. Fans of Riley Sager will absolutely love this one. Next slide, please. Up next from Library Reads Hall of Famer Susan Mallory comes Beach Vibes. When Brinley finds out that her little brother Rick is dating her best friend, she is totally Team Rick until she sees him in a compromising position with another woman. If you were Brinley, what would you do? Would you betray your brother and tell your friend what a cheat he is, or would you protect him because he's your only family? With a fun, propulsive hook, perfect for book clubs, and secrets, lies, and betrayals that readers will delight in unraveling, Susan Mallory's trademark wit and heart shine through here, almost as brightly as the sunny Malibu setting. Next slide, please. Next up, horror is such a growing category, and we have an exciting new voice in horror to share. Yeet Turhan's novel, Their Monstrous Hearts, centers on a struggling writer who inherits his estranged grandmother's villa and her famed butterfly collection, only to realize the crumbling estate is hiding darker secrets than he could ever have imagined. This dreamlike Gothic novel is perfect for fans of Mexican Gothic and Hereditary. Yeats is a marketing executive at Valentino, and his background in fashion clearly comes across in his lush, tactile writing style. Next slide, please. Midnight in Soap Lake by Matthew Sullivan is a novel set in the real-life town of Soap Lake, Washington. But in Matthew's hands, Soap Lake is the location of creepy events, eccentric characters, and mysterious property. So think Twin Peaks or Stephen King's Castle Rock. The novel follows Abigail, a Denver transplant, and Esme, a Soap Lake native who dies under mysterious circumstances. As Abigail unspools the mystery of Esme's death, she befriends an eccentric library patron, a neighbor in recovery, a hotel manager, and an orchard hand while trying to uncover more about the legend of a mythic figure named Treetop. Matthew Sullivan's debut, Midnight at the Bright Ideas Bookstore, was an indie next pick. Midnight in Soap Lake contains some subtle bright ideas, Easter eggs, and is such an immersive read. Next slide, please. Alka Joshi is a force to be reckoned with. Her New York Times bestselling Jaipur trilogy, which started with The Henna Artist, has sold over 1 million copies worldwide and has been translated into 29 languages to date. 6 Days in Bombay follows Sona, an Anglo-Indian nurse who goes on a journey across Europe to prove her innocence after a famous painter dies under her care. The artist leaves behind 3 paintings and a note asking Sona to deliver them to her former lovers in Prague, Paris, and Florence. And along the way, she uncovers the shocking history of a wonderfully complicated, sometimes cruel, but always magnetic woman. With compelling writing grounded in history, vivid characters that leap off the page, and a sweeping mystery, this is Alka Joshi at her finest. Next slide, please. And then author Kylie Lee Baker is the author of 2 YA duologies, The Keeper of Night and The Scarlet Alchemist, both which released to high acclaim. Her debut adult title is Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang, which takes her into the horror genre. Perfect for fans of The Only Good Indians and Parasite, this is an explosive novel that uses genre to explore the harsh social edges of racist street harassment, feminine rage, and the brutal violence experienced by Asian Americans during the pandemic. Bad Eater follows a biracial woman haunted by both her own inner trauma and hungry ghosts as she's entangled in a series of murders in New York City's Chinatown. The novel builds to an unforgettable finale. Kylie is an exciting new voice in horror. Next slide, please. Finally, Sarah Penner needs no introduction. Her debut, The Lost Apothecary, was one of our biggest books of the last 5 years, and she's knocked it out of the park yet again with The Amalfi Curse. This is a bold, witchy historical novel set on the high seas and on the glittery shores of Positano, Italy. This is a dual timeline narrative that follows a nautical archaeologist who is in Positano on a research fellowship and secretly hunting for sunken treasures. As she embarks on her treasure hunt, she begins to uncover an ancient curse and a story of forbidden love and witchcraft during the 1800s. And then we jump back and forth between these 2 narratives, the present in 1821, where we meet a powerful sea witch who is in a perilous situation that will have ripple effects for centuries to come. This is a must-read for fans of The Cloisters, Wayward, and Starling House. The novel masterfully intertwines elements of magic, history, folklore, and adventure, and it's wrapped up in this smart, juicy, fun story. Next slide, please. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening. You'll find my contact information here. Be sure to follow us. Thank you.
Hi there, everyone. I'm so jealous that I can't be there with you today. This is Sharon Shell, and I'm with IPG, Independent Publishers Group. So thanks for joining in, and I'm excited to share some of our publishers' titles with you. Next slide, please. The first title is called River of Lies. It's by James Latoile. It's by Ocean View Publishing, coming out in January. And River of Lies is the second novel in the Detective Emily Hunter mystery series, which can be read in any order, of course. But the homeless camps spread throughout the city of Sacramento are a topic of heated debate among residents. They're considered undesirable, a nuisance, and an eyesore. But when the camps fall victim to a string of devastating arson attacks, Detective Emily Hunter and her partner, Javier Medina, dive into the investigation and become acquainted with the real people whose lives have been destroyed. The attacks only begin to draw attention when 2 of the victims are identified as the city's former anti-homeless mayor and a camp social worker. But rather than strengthening the push for justice, the movement to completely abolish the camps intensifies. The investigation becomes politically charged when Emily discovers who stands to gain from burning the homeless out of their shelters. The investigation uncovers an unlikely suspect and a reluctant witness standing between Emily and the shocking truth. This is perfect for fans of Michael Conley and Karen Slaughter. Next slide, please. The next title is called The Department. This one's by Jacqueline Faber, and it's also by Ocean View, coming out in February. This is Jacqueline's debut novel, and it features dueling POVs that are separated by 1 year. One is the narrator is the victim who goes missing, and the other narrator is the professor trying to find her. Philosophy professor Neil Weber can't think of one good reason to get up in the morning. His wife has left him, his academic research has sputtered, and the prospect of tenure is more remote than ever. Until Lucia Venati disappears. A college student at Neil's Southern University, Lucia has a secret of her own, and one that haunts her relationships and leads to reckless, destructive behavior. When Neil is drawn into the mystery of her disappearance, he finds new energy, purpose, and relevance, but at what cost? Each clue pulls him deeper into Lucia's dark past, but also into the hidden lives of his closest friends and colleagues. Next slide. And the next title is called A Murder in Zion. This one's by Nicole Maggi, and this is by Ocean View Publishing, also coming out in March. This one A Murder in Zion is a riveting procedural mystery with breathtaking scenery, sympathetic and well-developed characters, and an absolute shocking twist. Readers will be glued to the page as they set off on a wild, high-stakes adventure through rugged wilderness. A Murder in Zion is the first book in a potential new series, of which each novel would be set in a different national park and feature the protagonist, Emmy Hellawell. When a body of a childhood friend turns up in the narrows of Zion National Park, Emmeline Hellawell, a special agent with the National Park Service, is called in to investigate. And as bodies start to pile up, Emmy soon realizes that the breathtaking beauty of Zion National Park may hide sordid secrets in its depths. And this is perfect for fans of C.J. Box and Lisa Gardner. Next slide. The next title is called The Betrayal of Thomas True. The author is A.J. West, and it's by Orenda Books, coming out in January. This one is set in the buried streets of Georgian London and the outrageous underworld of the Molly houses. A carpenter hiding a double life searches for a traitor who is betraying the secrets of the Mollys. The year is 1715, and Thomas True has arrived on Old London Bridge with a dangerous secret. One night, lost amongst the squalor of London's hidden back streets, he finds himself drawn into the outrageous underworld of the Molly houses. Meanwhile, carpenter Gabriel Griffin struggles to hide his double life as Lottie, the Molly's stoic guard. And when a young man is found murdered, he realizes there is a rat amongst them, betraying their secrets to a pair of murderous justices. Can Gabriel unmask the traitor before they hang? Can he save hapless Thomas from peril and their own forbidden love? Set amongst the buried streets of Georgian London, The Betrayal of Thomas True is a brutal and devastating thriller where love must overcome evil and the only true sin is betrayal. Next slide, please. Totally switching gears. The next title is called The New Fit: How to Own Your Fitness Journey in Your 40s, 50s, and Beyond by Erin Leventhal. It's by Triumph Books, coming out in January. And this book can help you break through the plateau and curate a meaningful, impactful fitness experience with this science-based approach to exercise and wellness over the age of 40. So no matter how much you love your movement practice, whether it's running or Pilates or even spin classes, your body just isn't responding like it used to in your 20s and 30s. The truth is that as we age, we have different needs from our fitness practice, and the fitness after 40 is anything but a one-size-fits-all proposition. It's about learning to curate the right plan for you based on individual factors and normative data. So while other books may focus on a particular type of exercise or a specific audience, The New Fit empowers readers with the knowledge to curate their own results-driven wellness plans based on data and individual factors. Author Erin Leventhal is a certified personal trainer and a precision nutrition certified fitness expert, as well as a former professional soccer player for the Minnesota Thunder. He served as a conditioning coach for the Thunder and then for the Major League Soccer team, Minnesota United, for 15 years, and working with a variety of athletes and up to the Olympic level. So it should be a good one. Next slide, please. This next title is called How We Heal: A Journey Toward Truth, Racial Healing, and Community Transformation from the Inside Out. It's by Lejeune Montgomery Tabron, published by Disruption Books, coming out in January. And this one, you guys should have an arc there as well. So if you're interested in picking that up. In How We Heal, Lejeune Montgomery Tabron is president and CEO of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, makes a powerful case for hope through racial healing. From a vivid portrait of her childhood in the 1960s Detroit to her leadership of one of the world's largest philanthropic institutions, Lejeune shares her full circle American story, a coming-of-age journey where she gains a firsthand understanding of how systemic racism prevents our children and communities from thriving, and learns about the transformative role healing can play in helping all of us transcend the legacy of racial inequity. The book serves as a testament to the power of transformation and a blueprint for how each of us, no matter who we are and how we lead, can use racial healing to bridge the empathy deficits in our communities. This book illuminates a path that all of us can follow, from trust to empathy and from understanding to repair, one conversation and one connection at a time. Next slide. This next story is called Protecting Whitney. It's the memoir of her bodyguard by David Roberts. It's by Chicago Review Press, coming out in January. And David Roberts was Whitney Houston's bodyguard, like the real one. Roberts was hired in 1988 for Houston's UK portion of the Moment of Truth World Tour. He was accustomed to working for diplomats, Fortune 500 clients, and he had reservations about working for a pop star. But Houston's heart of gold won him over from the moment they met at Heathrow Airport. There's a high bar for those that work in this business. You have to actually be willing to die for your boss. And Houston made that easy. Roberts got to travel the globe with one of the most fun-loving and generous souls he'd ever met. And his memoir reveals heartwarming anecdotes of life with one of the world's most recognizable stars. But there were also shocking and heartbreaking revelations. Roberts was present for some of Houston's most challenging ordeals, and he was helpless as he watched those who claimed to love and support her look the other way because they saw her voice box as a cash machine. His heart was ultimately shattered as he witnessed her succumb to the one threat that he could not protect her from, and that's herself. Next slide.
Sharon, you have 1 minute.
Gotcha. This is our last title. It's called Sports Illustrated True Crime. It's great writing from the pages of Sports Illustrated. And Sports Illustrated is the most respected voice in sports journalism, presents a wide-ranging collection of true crime storytelling. SI's award-winning writers dive deep on stories of sports crime and punishment through expansive investigations and in-depth storytelling, featuring tales of power, deception, murder, and mayhem. This anthology traverses the globe to examine darker element of sports, past and present. Exciting stuff. So thanks for listening. Appreciate your attention. I hope you found these interesting. You can always reach out for me, any questions at all, and you can find DRCs on NetGalley and Edelweiss. So have a great day, you guys. I wish I could be there. Thank you. On to Melissa.
First up, we have The 3 Lives of Kate Kay by Kate Fagan. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo meets First Sly Wins in this electric, voice-driven debut about an elusive best-selling author who decides to finally confess her true identity after years of hiding from her past. Kate Kay knows how to craft a story. As the creator of a best-selling book trilogy that struck box office gold as a film series, she's also one of the most successful authors of her generation. The thing is, Kate Kay doesn't really exist. She's never attended author events or granted any interviews. Her real identity has been a closely guarded secret until now. As a young adult, she and her best friend Amanda dreamed of escaping their difficult homes and moving to Hollywood to become movie stars. But the day before their grand adventure, a tragedy shattered their dreams, and Kate has been on the run ever since, taking on different names and charting a new future. But after a shocking revelation, Kate understands that returning home is the only way she'll be a whole person again. Next. More or Less Maddie by Lisa Genova follows Maddie Banks, a stressed out freshman at NYU. Between schoolwork, exams, navigating life in the big city, and a recent breakup, it's normal to feel overwhelmed. And it doesn't help that she's always felt like the odd one out in her picture-perfect Connecticut family. But Maddie's latest low is devastatingly low, and she goes on an antidepressant. She begins to feel good, dazzling in fact, and she soon spirals high into a wild and terrifying mania that culminates in a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. As she struggles to find her way in this new reality, navigating the complex effects bipolar has on her identity, her relationships, and her life dreams, Maddie will have to figure out how to manage being both too much and not enough. With her signature deep empathy and insight, Harvard-trained neuroscientist and New York Times bestselling author Lisa Genova has crafted another profoundly moving novel that makes complicated mental health issues accessible and human. Next. Disquieting and yet delightful, Idle Grounds by Christelle Bamford is a rich exploration of the interior lives of children and a gripping meditation on birthright, decline, and the weight of family history. Lingering at the edge of a family party, a troop of cousins loses track of the youngest among them. With their parents preoccupied with bickering, the children decide they must set out to investigate and find their missing cousin themselves, to the rickety chicken coop, to the barn, and then finally into the woods that once comprised their late grandmother's property. The more the children search and the deeper they walk, the more threatening the woods become, the more lost they become in turn, caught between their aunt's home in the present day, their parents' childhood home just through the trees, and the memory of the house their grandmother grew up in. Soon, what began as a quest searching for a cousin gives way to a journey that undermines everything they've been told about who they are, where they came from, and what they deserve. Next. The Trouble with Anna by Rachel Griffiths is for anyone who can't get enough of Bridgerton-like antics and romance. Anna didn't intend to ride in a high-stakes horse race or start up a betting ring, and she certainly didn't mean to find herself in so many darkened corners with Lord Julian Ramsay quarreling and kissing in turn. But when her grandfather's strange will stipulates that Anna must marry or she'll be left broke, there's nothing she won't do to win her fight for her independence. Even go toe-to-toe with Lord Ramsay with her own heart as the prize. Fans of the slow burn will devour this frenemies to lovers story, perfect for fans of Sarah McLean and Evie Dunmore. Next. This is The Women on Platform 2 by Laura Anthony. Dublin, 1969. Mara has just married Dr. Christy Davenport, and they look forward to growing their family. But as her husband's vicious temper emerges, Mara worries that her home might never be safe for a child. Meanwhile, her close friend Bernie, a mother of 3, learns the devastating news that if she conceives again, her health complications could prove fatal. Jumping forward to Dublin 2023, a close call makes Saoirse realize that she may never want to be a mother. Little does she know that only a few decades ago, a group of women made this option possible for her, and she's about to meet one of them. The Women on Platform 2 is a haunting, powerful story of feminine resistance and resilience that reminds all of us where we started and how far we still have to go. Next. The Buffalo Hunter Hunter, and yes, that redundancy is intentional, by Stephen Graham Jones is a chilling historical horror novel set in the American West, told in the form of a diary, written in 1912 by a Lutheran pastor and eventually discovered within a wall. What that diary unveils is a slow massacre, a chain of events that goes back to 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow. Told and transcribed interviews by a Blackfeet named Good Stab, who shares the narrative of his peculiar life over a series of confessional visits to said pastor. Tune in to this American Indian revenge story written by one of the new masters of horror, Stephen Graham Jones. Next. Inspired by a true literary mystery, New York Times bestselling author Patty Callahan Henry returns with the story she left behind, the sweeping story of a legendary book, a lost mother, and a daughter's search for them both. In 1927, 8-year-old Clara Harrington's magical childhood shatters when her mother, the renowned author Bronwyn Newcastle Fordham, disappears off the coast of South Carolina. Bronwyn stunned the world with a written book in an invented language that became a national sensation when she was just 12 years old. Her departure leaves behind not only a devoted husband and heartbroken daughter, but also the hope of ever translating the sequel to her landmark work. As the headlines focus on the missing author, Clara yearns for something far deeper, her mother. By 1952, Clara is an illustrator raising her own daughter, Winnie, and when a stranger named Charlie Jameson contacts her from London, claiming to have discovered a handwritten dictionary of her mother's language, Clara is skeptical. Compelled by the tragedy of her mother's vanishing, she crosses the Atlantic with Winnie, only to arrive during one of London's most deadly natural disasters, the Great Smog. With asthmatic Winnie in peril, they escape the city with Charlie and find refuge in the Jameson family's retreat in the Lake District. It is there that Clara must finally find the courage to uncover the truth about her mother and the story she left behind. Next. Next is Big Chief by John Hickey. I'll be honest, this book is a political thriller, and I know we might be tired of anything political, but this book, which is There meets The Night Watchman, is too juicy to miss. Readers follow Mitch Caddo, a young law school graduate and aspiring political fixer who's an outsider in the homeland of his Anishinaabe ancestors. But alongside his friend, tribal President Mac Beck, he runs the government of the Passage Rouge Nation, and with it, the Golden Eagle Casino and Hotel. On the eve of Mac's re-election, their tenuous grip on power is threatened by a nationally known activist and politician, Gloria Hawkins, and her young aide, Layla Beck, the latter of whom is Mac's estranged sister and Mitch's former love. In their struggle for control, the campaign resorts to bare-knuckle political gamesmanship, testing the limits of how far they will go and what they will sacrifice to win it all. But after a fatal accident, the election slides into chaos and pits Mitch against the only family he has. As relationships strain to their breaking points and a peaceful protest threatens to become an all-consuming riot, Mitch and Layla must work together to stop the reservation's descent into violence. Next. And lastly is The Bear of Bad News by Elizabeth Deeney. This book is perfect for fans of Gail Honeyman's Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine and Kirsten Chen's Counterfeit. Las Vegas hairdresser Lucy Ray is facing a ton of bad news lately. She just found out her fiance has been cheating on her with someone from his improv class. She's flat broke, and it's more than time for a change. Enter a most unusual job opportunity, a bear of bad news. Sure, it's a little weird. The job description has few details, and the bad news itself is more like a vaguely worded threat. But Lucy can't say no to those perks. An all expenses paid trip to the Italian Dolomites, plus a generous bonus if she proves that she's delivered the message. Then she learns that her task is just the tip of the iceberg. Launched into a world of betrayal and greed involving 80-year-old secrets, stolen jewels, and a World War II era mystery, Lucy is in over her head, and she's connected to her mission in ways she never saw coming. Next. All right, please be sure to check out simonandschuster.net/library. That is the hub where you can find all of the resources on this page and more, which has everything to help you with, including collection curation to book clubs to community reads. And if you have my handout, that's where the QR code leads you. Next. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And I believe Maddie is up next.
Hi, everyone. Again, sad I can't be there in person as well, but glad I can at least be here to share a few new titles with you. I'm Maddie Hughes, the School and Library Marketing Manager for Disney Publishing, and I have a couple recent and upcoming titles from across our imprints to share. Next slide. First up, a few special Disney Editions titles that have recently published. Directing at Disney by Pete Docter chronicles the progression of the animation director role during the 1920s through the 1970s. These personal portraits of Walt's closest creative leaders offer a fuller picture behind the stories, characters, and magical realms in Disney's beloved and respected animated films. Dream Chasing is a recounting by former Imagineering president Bob Weiss of 4 decades of creating and seeing to completion challenging products at the Disney parks, leading teams from the top secret high-tech corridors of Walt Disney Imagineering to the highest levels of the Walt Disney Company. And then finally, Martha Blanding began her extraordinary run with Disney in May 1971 as Disneyland's first ever Black tour guide, launching an impressive 5 decades-long career at the happiest place on earth in Anaheim, California. Groundbreaking Magic is a personal journey through 50 years of Disneyland, as told like never before, through the eyes and the perspective of the first ever Black American to achieve a half-century-long career with the Walt Disney Company. Next slide. In March 2022, an international polar expedition team made an astonishing find, the wreck of Ernest Shackleton's legendary Endurance, lost in Antarctica in 1915 after being crushed by ice and then swallowed by the Weddell Sea. The harrowing story of Shackleton's survival and the rescue of all 27 men aboard is well known, but the ship itself has lain unseen for a century, 10,000 feet underwater. Until now, the vessel remains incredibly intact as crystal clear photography and digital scans from the expedition reveal. This book is a thrilling firsthand account of the expedition co-authored by its leader and deputy leader, John Shears and Nico Vincent, and it's the first and only book to fully document the discovery, and it was produced as a companion to the National Geographic documentary film Endurance, which is available for streaming now, I believe, on Disney+. Next slide. The Inherited Mind. ABC News correspondent James Longman was a preteen in boarding school when his dad, who was diagnosed with depression and schizophrenia, died by suicide. As he got older, James's own bouts of depression spurred him to examine how his father's mental health might have affected his own. He engaged with experts to uncover the science behind what's inherited, how much environmental factors can impact genetic traits, and how one can overcome a familial history of mental illness and trauma. In this memoir, he shares what he has learned on his quest to better understand Frankenstein himself and his family, what current genetic science is telling us about inheritance of mental illness, and how he has been able to persevere through his family trauma. Next slide. Here Beside the Rising Tide is the second novel by Emily Jane, following On Earth as it is on television. This is another genre-bending, just really fun ride of a novel. When 40-year-old Jen Lenaro, best-selling author of the Philippia Bay action romance series, decides to take her kids on vacation to Pearl Island, a place where she spent happy times in her own childhood, she hopes it will be an escape from burnout and her soon-to-be ex-husband. What she finds is 10-year-old Timmy Caruso, her summer friend from years ago, who disappeared one summer and never returned. Now he's emerging from the nighttime sea. He's still a kid and on a mission to save the world, and he says he needs her help. In the days that follow, as Jen grapples with work deadlines, spirited children, and her burgeoning interest in a very sexy contractor, alarming and mysterious events unfold along the coast. And when a terror appears in the deeper waters, Jen begins to wonder if, just maybe, Timmy is onto something. Next slide. Written in the Waters is a searing memoir by National Geographic explorer Tara Roberts that recounts her epic journey to trace the global slave trade across the Atlantic Ocean and find her place in the world. When Tara Roberts first caught sight of a photograph at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History depicting the underwater archaeology group Diving with a Purpose, it called out to her. Here were Black women and men strapping on masks, fins, and tanks to explore Atlantic Ocean waters along the coastlines of Africa, North America, and Central America, seeking the wrecks of slave ships long lost in time. Inspired, Roberts joined them and started on a path of discovery more challenging and personal than she ever could have imagined. Complex and unflinchingly authentic, this deeply moving narrative heralds an important new voice in literature that will open hearts and minds everywhere. Next slide. Tree Notes. From an esteemed National Geographic explorer and forest ecologist, Nalini Nadkarni, this collection of poignant essays, organized by season, explores the nature, value, and meaning of trees in our lives with charm and thoughtfulness. Inspired by Nadkarni's popular podcast broadcast by Utah's public radio station KUER, Tree Notes comprises more than 45 brief essays organized by season. Chapters roam from big questions. How many kinds of trees are there? Trees and lightning, and tree pollen, to the particular, the baobab tree, mistletoe, and conductor's batons. Lovely illustrations make every turn of the page a happy moment in this arboreal adventure. Next slide. And this is the last one for me, Field Guides to the Birds of the United States and Canada, East and West. These entirely updated editions of National Geographic's top-selling regional bird field guides, which were originally published in 2008, provide ID information, maps, and illustrations for identifying more than 800 bird species of the eastern United States and Canada, 1,000 bird species of the western United States and Canada, and for the first time includes birds of Hawaii. And National Geographic is really known for their excellent birding guide, so we're really excited to have this updated version. Next slide. So that's everything from me. If you need to get in touch, feel free to reach out via email. And we also have a number of digital galleys available for request on NetGalley and Edelweiss. And we also do have some print galleys. So if you prefer that, feel free to reach out and we can mail you one. Thank you guys so much.
Please put your hands together, joining us from the land of Lincoln, the Prairie State, representing Library Reads. It's Rebecca Benook.
I was so excited when Chris and Annie and Melissa told me that this was back after 5 years that I had to fly in from Chicago for this. I could have been Zooming as well or Microsoft Teamings or whatever, but it's much more fun to see all of your faces in person. So how many of you actually, before I even do this, because I know you all want to have lunch and I could probably make this shorter, how many of you already participate in Library Reads? Okay, not everybody. That's good. So I'll some of you can check your Facebook or go on Instagram or something right now. You know all this stuff.
But let me just go through some of the basics about Library Reads, what we do and how we do it, and how you can be part of what we do. So we are a registered 501c6 not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to connect adults with books that library staff across the country recommend. We also do free training and events for library staff centered on reader's advisory for adult patrons, and we have money to give away as well. So I'll get to that at the very end of this, actually. So Library Reads advocates for adult books of all types, fiction and nonfiction. So please vote for your favorites every month. Anyone who works in a public library in the US is eligible to vote. So you didn't know it, but you are automatically a member of Library Reads just by virtue of working in a public library. It doesn't matter what the job title is, whether you have an MLS or not. We want CERT clerks, we want everybody, we want adult librarians, kids librarians, but it is just for adult books. We want directors, admin, we want everybody to be voting. As long as you read adult books and love to share your recommendations, you are in. The only requirement we have is that you do have to be signed up for either NetGalley or Edelweiss or both. And you have to have working in a public library as part of your profile. That's what gets you to see the buttons that we have to allow you to vote. So why should you become involved with Library Reads? For reader's advisory, we love to say all the time, it's 10 more books plus a month that you can pretend that you've read. One of the things I've always said in all of the reader's advisory trainings I've ever done throughout the years is people that come into your library think that you have read all of those books on the new bookshelf. They think that you have hand selected them for them, and they think that you can talk to them about them when they say, hey, what is this book like? Or that when they come up and ask for something that's like something else, well, you know all the books in the library, don't you? So Library Reads is one of my very favorite tools to pretend that here are 10 books that you've read every month. And if you have not ever seen one of our lists, we'll show one in a couple slides. Every book, so we have a top 10, we have 2 bonus picks, one fiction and one nonfiction, and then we have our Hall of Fame. Our Hall of Fame, I believe this last year, the biggest list that we had was 12 on the Hall of Fame. So there was one month where we gave you guys 24 books to talk about. And what's nice about it is the top 10 has an annotation written by one of the voters. So it is a usually 3, no more than 4 sentence annotation. So you can look at that book, you can read that annotation and immediately know what it's about, what the right audience is for it, how to talk to somebody about it. So there's 10 books right there that you don't have to read, that you sound like a big smarty. I love it. Another good thing that Library Reads is good for is book group possibilities. A lot of our blurbs point out things when they would be good for book clubs. And if you check our main list, we have an archive on our website. I just put the November list in there actually before I left. And so we are almost up to 1,700 books from the last 10 years. So you can sort that list. And one of the ways you can sort it is by things that we've identified as book club picks. So whenever I go out to talk to book club, people who run book clubs, I tell them, do that, sort it. You have an automatic, library folks recommend these as good for book clubs. So it's really great. You can also use our content on your library's website or social media, use it to print out and put at your desk, etc. Libraries is also good for collection development. You can check our list against your orders to add more books to your collection, and it really does help you become more familiar with new books and authors that are getting attention. Oh, this is what I was just saying, actually. It helps you increase your familiarity with publishers. You really, once you start to look at it every month, you really kind of see, oh, I know automatically that imprint publishes this kind of book. So I know what that is. I know right away that that's science fiction. I know right away that that's romance, etc. It also becomes very obvious what books are trending. Romantasy is through the roof. I swear if I see one more book with witches on the cover, like that was very interesting sociologically to look at this year. We have lots of witchy romance. The bulk of our list, I will say, we tend to do a lot of romances and a lot of mysteries and thrillers. Then we have the rest of the genres kind of sprinkle in. We have seen a lot of fantasy and some science fiction come up this year. I heartily ask you to vote for nonfiction because we love it when nonfiction hits the list organically. We love nonfiction so much that we started doing it as a bonus pick. So there's always one guaranteed nonfiction pick every month, but please don't forget to vote for those. And let's see, where else are we? Oh, so what makes our list so special? Again, it's those annotations. You don't have to write an annotation if you're voting. We love it when you do, but your vote still counts even if you don't. And if you are worried that, oh, I'm not really a writer or I don't know what to say, we actually have an editing team. I work for a board of 20 plus librarians across the country, and 3 of them have gotten together and become our editing team. So when I go through, I look at all of the votes that come through, I pick out the annotations for the month, and then the editing team gets to work and they shorten it down to these 3 sentences that we can use. We look for appeal factors, etc. So you don't even have to worry about writing a really, really great review, although some of our reviewers are fabulous. We love them. So definitely, if you are a voter and you haven't written an annotation before, please consider it. We would love that. Here, for example, is a recent one of our titles on the list. This was our top pick. So you can see there is a brief description of the plot. It tells you what kind of story and the appeal factors for that. And then all of our books on the top 10, we also feature a read-alike that comes from our friends at Novelist. So actually, it's 20 books you can recommend. So how do you vote using Edelweiss and NetGalley? The main thing to know is that our voting deadlines are 1 month ahead of publication dates. So you do need to read the books in advance. The ARCs are available via Edelweiss and NetGalley. That's where you vote. It's like I said before, those are free services. If you're not on them, you can go to our website. We have a drop-down menu, and the For Library Staff section has screenshots of both Edelweiss and NetGalley. Many of the titles do appear in both, so you don't have to, you can pick which one you like the best, or you can do what I do and all of my board members do, and most of you probably do, is have an account with each of them. Doesn't matter. The one thing I like to remind people, though, is if you are voting from a print copy, you came here, you got all your ARCs, you went to ALA, you got your ARCs. If you vote on NetGalley, you do have to download the book before you get that vote button. So it doesn't mean you have to read it. You don't have to download it and do anything with it. You just have to download it into your NetGalley account. That's what gives you the vote button. On Edelweiss, you don't need to do that. You can just go through ISBN, title, whatever, find that book and vote for it. Just kind of a little note. We also have some videos on our website on we have a walkthrough of both services, how to sign up for them, how to find books, and then we've got a video on writing annotations as well. The top 3 questions that we get from new users that I'd like to make sure they're aware of is, do you need to sign up with us in order to participate? No, you just need to sign up with Edelweiss or NetGalley. Do we send out books? Unfortunately, no, but you access the titles as ebooks via Edelweiss and NetGalley. You access those print ARCs by connecting with our library marketing partners. You come to things like this today, you go to annual, you go to RSL. On our website, we have a resources page, and that has a 1-sheet PDF of all of the publishers that we work with, all of their contact names, all of the emails, all of the links to their newsletters. So if you're not already familiar with all of our fine folks via Alma, all of their information is on our website. And the last thing is, does it ever cost you anything to participate? Absolutely not. All of the materials on our website are free. There's no charge with Edelweiss or NetGalley. We are a not-for-profit organization, as I mentioned, and we're supported by our generous publisher friends. There's no membership. There's nothing that you need to do or your library needs to do to be connected. And then one of the things I will mention, because this is my last slide, is we do actually give away money. So if you go to our website, there's a drop down for our continuing education programs, and we have 2 of them. The first one is meant for individuals. So if you wanted to go to ALA, or you wanted to go to your state library conference, or you want to go to PLA and you're looking for some funds for that, we do have individual awards available. The only thing that needs to happen is there needs to be some kind of a focus for readers advisory training or collection development, which is why you're going. So for example, we won't send someone to a children's conference or a young adult conference. And all we ask you to do is fill out the application, tell us what you're interested in doing at that event, and then within a month or so afterwards, if you could give us a little write-up of what you did so we know how the money was used. The other one that we just instituted it last year, is our institutional sponsorship. And that is where your library director or your admin or your friends group can contact us if they would like to bring in an author or bring in a speaker. We've already funded several this year, staff days where people were having readers advisory training or collection development training. And that again is the key. We will not sponsor anything other than readers advisory or collection development for adult books, but the money is there and available. So hit us up. And hit me up during lunch or afterwards or at a break if you want to come and chat with me. I've also got my fabulous board members here today. I've got Stephanie and Aline and Anna and and we've got Miriam, who was one of our founding board members. So come step on up and ask us if you have questions. And otherwise, I'll let you all have lunch. Thank you.
I'm going to kick off our authors, which I'm really excited about. So happy we can do that for y'all today. So my name is Ivy Weir. I am the Senior Marketing and Publicity Manager at Quirk Books. You'll hear from me again later about the rest of our books on our list. But right now, it is my pleasure to introduce Clay McLeod Chapman, author of the upcoming social horror Wake Up and Open Your Eyes, which will be on sale January 7th, 2025. Called one of his favorite horror storytellers working today by Jordan Peele, Clay has written novels for all ages, as well as plays, comics, and scripts for screen and audio. His most recent published novel, What Kind of Mother, was named a Best Horror Title of 2023 by the New York Times Book Review, Esquire, Book Riot, and more. And on a personal note, I love working with him because he is one of the kindest people and yet writes some of the gnarliest horror I've ever read. So please join me in welcoming Clay.
Oh man, hello. How is everybody doing? I honestly cannot think of a better room to be in today. I want to be in a room with 100 librarians right now, and I cannot thank you enough for letting me be a part of this. This is amazing. I don't know. I might need this more than you guys do. So, you know, thank you for putting up with me. I have a time limit, so I feel like I'm looking at the clock. Everybody turn their heads like, who over there is telling you there's going to be that Showtime and the Apollo person who hooks me 9 minutes from now. But I need to say that, like, from age, you know, the dawn of me, there was that time when my grandmother, Bon Air, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, Chesterfield County, the Bon Air Public Library. My grandmother would take me after school to the library, and she would say, 2 books. You get to pick 2 books. I'm not going to judge you. You get to say, you know, whatever you want to read. Just know one of them you have to read to yourself, and the other I will read to you at bedtime. And I would always pick for me to read, like, The Far Side. And for her, I would pick, you know, Lord of the Rings. And it was amazing because that was honestly what got me started reading, which then eventually led to writing. And it has been, you know, I just want to say, you know, thank you, Bon Air Library. Thanks to my grandma. But we're not here to talk about, I don't know. I'm going to talk about, are you guys ready for the scariest book of 2025? This book comes out on January 6th. No, sorry. I meant January 7th. Oh! I have been holding on to that one for years. I probably will never, ever use it again, but I'm glad I got to test run. Yes, I have written a book called Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. And I do not know what to tell you people. I thought I had an elevator pitch a week ago, 2 days ago. Life is evolving, we're evolving, culture is evolving. This book, I want to believe, you know, when I wrote it 2 years ago, a year ago, this was in the rearview mirror, but it's not. And maybe my impassioned pitch for the day is that this book might have certain added relevance for where we are next year. That all said, the kind of simplest pitch is, imagine half of the country getting possessed by demons. Which half is possessed? Well, that depends. That depends on where you get your information from. Do you get it from social media? Do you get it from cable news? What is your screen, and how do you imbibe news? How do you imbibe what is going on in the world? And, I'm walking this very fine line and saying this is a book about where we are. And it's not, I don't know. I feel like Goodreads reviews be damned. This is going to be a very polarizing book. And I think it's a polarizing book for a lot of the right reasons. I wrote it. I have to commit to it. I was the one who said I wanted to do this. And the honest fact was, I realized that a very near and dear, very close member of my family was somehow shifting in her personality, in her in terms of like her identity. I grew up with this woman. This woman meant the world to me, and I didn't know who she was anymore because she would come to me and say, "Have you heard about what's happening out there in the world?" And I'd be like, "What are you talking about? That's not true." And it became this, there was this kind of schisming effect to our reality, to our relationship, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I haven't gotten her back. And horror is one of these genres, whether it's film or books or comics. Horror is there for us to kind of, exorcise the things that we're afraid of. And for me as a writer, I wanted to write about something that terrified me. And it was the fact that I was losing someone that I loved. And I didn't know how to get her back. I still don't know how to get her back. So I wrote a book about it. And it's this book. And the expanded pitch is, imagine some, 40-something cis white male family man who lives in Brooklyn, who losing his parents to more and more conservative cable news TV. And suddenly they just disappear. They are not answering the phone anymore. They're not picking up answering texts. So this young man, I say young, he's in his 40s, has to say goodbye to his kids, his wife, go down to Virginia, see what's going on with his parents. And when he arrives, that's when the nightmare really begins. And it's not just him who's dealing with this. It is everybody in the country. Which is to say, you get your possessions in, you get your kind of zombie epidemics in. I don't know if we have any Walking Dead fans or The Last of Us fans, but this is something that kind of takes the idea of The Exorcist and just gives it over to the country. It's not just one poor little girl anymore. It's not Reagan with her family in Georgetown. It is everybody. That sounds pretty scary to me, which is also to say, tread carefully, folks. Like, this is a book that, like, as it's getting out there and people are starting to read it, it has a very polarizing effect. But I think that adds to its value. So you as librarians, I feel like you will read it because it is in your tote bags at the end of the day. And, from there, I don't know, but know that it is there for a conversation. It is there, some people will not like it. It's not going to be necessarily who you think wouldn't like it. This is a book that doesn't just kind of go to one side of this political spectrum and say, well, the other half is bad. You got to give it time. You got to be patient with it. It is a book that does look at both sides, and I don't know. No one's free. No one is safe. But yes, I am here to say that Jordan Peele liked it. I'm here to say Book List gave it a star review. They liked it. There are other reviews coming, which I'm sensing that they like it as well. But it is a conversation. And yes, I am in Brooklyn, which is also to say you are all tri-state librarians. So if you need a guest, just know I have a car. I will drive. Your book clubs, find me. I am very Googleable. Just know that this is a book that I want to get out there and into people's hands. So I'm ready. That is what I wanted to say. The only other thing that I have to ask, and like, when is it that you ever get to be in front of this many librarians? Would you guys please humor me for a second? Yeah? Just say, you know, we made it. Oh, do that, yeah. Oh, but now you got to do it again. And I think I'm out of time. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much, Clay. We first met the character of Zoe Brennan in author Laura Piper Lee's book called Hannah Tate Beyond Repair as Hannah's good friend. But now in her own story, Zoe is working hard to keep the family vineyard going. But when her father decides to return home to Italy, he informs Zoe that he's hired his replacement, who turns out to be Lane Woods, the first woman Zoe ever crushed on. With a big wine festival coming to town, Zoe knows she's going to have to collaborate, not argue with her first crush. But it doesn't mean there won't be some long hours together planning, tasting, and flirting. Oh my. Zoe Brennan, First Crush, out in January 2025, is second chance romance with humor and heat, and where wine and pride collide. Library Journal just said in its verdict, this steamy romance has everything readers could ask for. And Publishers Weekly, in a brand new starred review, said, quote, "This demands to be savored." My friends, we agree. So please say hello to Laura Piper Lee.
Hello, people. First of all, that was amazing. Can we get another hand for Clay? I kind of feel like I just won a car, but I didn't. So that's on you, I think. Okay. First, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here to talk about my sapphic rom-com, Zoe Brennan, First Crush. As he said, it comes out in January. It's very near and dear to my heart, as are librarians. Y'all have been some of my biggest supporters, not only for my debut, Hannah Tate Beyond Repair, but just generally in my life. So I really thank you for what you do. I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about myself and why I decided to write Zoe Brennan. So I know it doesn't look like it now, but growing up, I was a very bookish indoors child. And now I'm a very bookish indoors adult. So it probably comes as no surprise to you that sandwiched between those two eras of my life, I was a ridiculous, angsty teenager that was also bookish. I had this journal that had a crushed purple velvet cover that I wrote bad poetry in, some of which was almost as steamy as what ended up in this romance, okay? I just feel like that gives you a really good idea of what you're working with here. So I was really deep in my crushed velvet journal era when I had my own first excruciating crush. I was 14 years old. Weirdly, the president of my middle schools in the small Georgia town where I grew up, Student Christian Club. I don't know how that happened. It did. And I was at the extracurricular fair for rising freshmen when I first saw her. We will call her Morrissey because she was wearing a Smiths t-shirt that day, and I still can't hear the Smiths without thinking about her. I know, hard eyes, right? Oh, she was so hot, y'all. She was wearing these giant baggy jeans and clunky black Doc Martens. I actually wore my pink ones in honor of her today. And she had like short black hair that was dyed magenta. So yes, this was the 1990s. And yes, I do realize I basically fell in love with like the ghost of Gen X past, okay? So Morrissey was sitting at the high school debate team table. And I was floored. I was stunned. I thought she was the most interesting, beautiful person I had ever seen in my life. And I can still feel and channel that giddy rush of unidentifiable feelings, you know, that I had that moment when I first saw her. She was also a deeply kind person. So Morrissey saw me gaping at her, okay, just gaping, and invited me over to talk about debate, which was weird. And so we talked for a few minutes about God knows what. I totally dissociated from my corporeal form, which I have also been doing for 2 days now, ever since Tuesday. But I'm with you in the moment. I'm with you in here now. And so all I remember from walking away from that table was that I suddenly knew two things. One, I was not a good Christian girl who was properly disinterested in boys and sex, because two, I was gay. It was a shocker. And also I had just joined the high school debate team, which that was unfortunate. So anyway, I want you to know that I pined for this girl so hard that I would join a high school debate team. I pined with like the power of 1,000 Claire Danes from my so-called life. Like Jordan Catalano had nothing on Morrissey. And the only thing is, though, when she did not seem to reciprocate my very awkward attempts at hinting like, hey, I'm gay, just found out. Can I touch your hair? I did the next best thing. I dated her older brother. Okay, so that turns out it was not the next best thing. It was actually a really stupid thing. And it was so hilariously misguided that I gave this terrible idea to my protagonist, Zoe Brennan. And I actually processed a lot of my painful, hilarious first crush feelings when I was writing Zoe's story, which was super cathartic to do. I included things, the good, the bad, the ridiculous, the pining, the queer awakening, all things that make for an excellent rom-com, in my opinion. And when I set to write Zoe Brennan, I really specifically wanted to look at the strange power dynamics that those first crushes can form and will last and linger for the rest of your life. For example, Morrissey, I still know her, and she said she's going to read Zoe. And I tell you, I'm more nervous about that right now than I am talking to you guys. I am sweating just thinking about it. But I also wanted to look at how those strange power dynamics shift and ultimately flounder when your first crush becomes painfully, obnoxiously a real person with real flaws. And in Zoe's case, and Lane Wood's right here, a real attitude that Zoe just cannot stand. So Chris already told you a little bit about what the story is about. I'm going to repeat it just because it's my flow, right? So Zoe, the story begins with Zoe and her dad. They run this small family vineyard in Blue Ridge, Georgia, which is where my folks are from. If you notice a Southern accent, no, you don't. I think it's basically gone. Like if you heard my family, nah, this is not a Southern accent. Okay. But so Zoe and her dad run this small family vineyard, and money is tight. But Bluebell Vineyards is just a delight and beloved by tourists and townies alike. And so when this major wine festival comes to town, Zoe's like, that is mine. That is going to turn this sinking ship around. I must have it. But all of that gets thrown out the window when she finds out that her dad, the vintner, the guy who makes the wine, is going to go back to Italy to take care of his dying mother. So Zoe, just like anybody who is facing a major depressing setback, impulsively decides to have a blindfolded threesome. I mean, that's just what you do, right? She proceeds to have the best sex of her life with a longtime friends with benefits and excitingly a stranger. But when the blindfolds come off, Zoe is horrified to discover that the mystery butch who just rocked her world is none other than Lane Woods, her first crush, and also the sister of the guy she dated when she couldn't handle telling her about her feelings. Zoe's mortified. So Lane just got home from, this stint out in Napa. So she is a Napa snob vintner, and she's home. We don't know why. Zoe doesn't find out either. She gets the hell out of there. She is mortified. But she finds out the next morning when Lane shows up to take over the winemaking operations for Zoe's dad while he's out of the country. It's a shock. It's a shock to her. It is a shock to us all. I had so much fun writing that moment. I love writing embarrassing moments, by the way. It's like one of my favorite things to do. I feel like I've been embarrassed so much in my life. Like that's what it's for. Let me process this, right? And after Zoe gets over the shock of it, she's actually kind of pumped. I mean, the sex was super hot. They have amazing chemistry together. But she quickly discovers that Lane hates Blue Ridge, hates the wine that Bluebell Vineyards is known for. She calls it party wine, or bachelorette party wine, actually. And she also seems to hate being told what to do, which is very concerning when it's your new employee who doesn't know what she's doing, right? And the vibes just quickly sour. Also very fun to write. So Lane goes from her first crush to an accidental hookup to her employee to massive pain in Zoe's ass. And y'all, this book it was so much fun to write, and it's so much fun to read because them bickering is hilarious and them doing other things is even better. The sexual tension between these two is like chef's kiss, my horniest work yet. And when they finally get over their stuff and learn how to work together to win that festival, and finally give in to their feelings for each other, it is delicious. I am so proud of the tension that I created in this novel, and it is my swooniest work yet. I wrote this one line and I was just like, oh, if only Morrissey said that to me. She never did. She did not. So backing up a sec, while Zoe never told Lane how she felt in high school, I did finally muster the courage to tell Morrissey. And we had this on-again, off-again romance, thank you, that lasted for most of high school in the closet, sometimes in a real closet, at sleepovers until my mom caught on, and at debate tournaments, high on the adrenaline of kicking boys' asses, to be honest. It was so much fun and a very formative time for me. So in some ways, this crush, being that I am a lawyer now and I write queer romance, this first crush was formative for me on a professional level as well. And so really and truly, that's why I set out to write Zoe Brennan. It is an ode to falling in love with the real person after the crush has kind of haunted you for so long. It's very funny, very horny. It's very small town Georgia queer, which is a demographic we do not have enough of in fiction, in my opinion. If your library has book clubs, Zoe would be great for queer fiction, romance lovers, people who like wine, and also that blindfolded threesome I told you about is in chapter 2, page 18. And I hear that is a major selling point. If y'all know Meryl Wilsner, who's one of my favorite authors, she was like, why aren't you leading with that? Or I misgendered. They said that. And I was like, all right, Meryl, I'll lead with that. So for fans of Maisie Eddings, Ashley Herring-Blake, and Anita Kelly will all love Zoe. The Library Journal said so. Chris already read you the verdict from them, but he said he just stopped with the first part, that it has everything readers could ask for. He forgot the other amazing compliments, which are excellent writing, well-developed characters, an atmospheric setting, and a forced proximity romance. Fans of Ashley Herring-Blake and Anita Kelly will adore Zoe and Lane. Told you so, right? And clamor for more from Lee. Publishers Weekly just gave Zoe a starred review, calling it a sensual sapphic rom-com as heady and complex as the wines it describes in breathless detail. This demands to be savored. And not to be outdone, Kirkus describes it as a funny and very steamy romance about the importance of being open to love and all the life has to offer. And they gave Zoe some of my favorite praise yet, lauding it for potent chemistry, intense longing, and creative sex scenes. So if that doesn't convince you to pick up Zoe, I don't know what will. I hope y'all really enjoy it. Thank you so much for having me talk today. I really appreciate it.
Hello, hello. Thank you all for coming. This is a really great day, and I'm glad to be here. I am introducing Helena Rowe. She's a 4-time Pushcart Prize nominated writer and the author of American Soul. A former assistant professor of pediatrics, she has practiced and taught at top 10 children's hospitals, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Johns Hopkins, and Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. She earned her MFA in creative nonfiction from the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome, Helena.
Thank you so much for showing up today. I'm a little terrified, so. Librarians and English teachers were my favorite people when I was growing up. So a belated shout out to the librarians in Petersburg, Virginia, and West New York, New Jersey for letting me borrow as many books. Yay! For letting me borrow as many books as I wanted when I was a tween and a teenager. And I would also like to thank Teresa DeLucci, my marketer at Grand Central Publishing, because she made me write an author's letter. Yep, I stand by making me because I didn't want to do it. But in writing one, I finally learned how to talk about my novel. And the first line of my letter was, quote, "To be perfectly honest, I never intended to write a novel," end quote. And it's absolutely true. I'd been a model minority. After all, I'm Korean American. And I'd gone to medical school to please my parents and became an assistant professor of pediatrics. But by 2006, I had abandoned my career in medicine and was pursuing an MFA in creative nonfiction at the University of Pittsburgh. And I was in Seoul. The first time I'd returned to Korea since leaving as a 6-year-old child. I was studying Korean language at Konkuk University. But in the summer of 2006, I was completely unaware that the origins of my novel, Stone Angels, was taking root. Perhaps it was the confluence of my first hearing about the victims of sexual slavery by Japan during the Asia-Pacific War, which occurred between 1931 and 1945, along with my heart-wrenching sorrow over my mother's first suicide attempt, and my acute alienation from feeling neither Korean nor American in Seoul, that drove me to seek refuge in books. On my desk in my tiny dorm room in Konkuk University were two of my favorite novels, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison and Persuasion by Jane Austen. Morrison's novel of a girl brutalized by her father and shunned by her community may seem diametrically opposed to Austen's Regency-era novel about second chances at love. But these two female authors gave me the courage to write Stone Angels. Of course, it wasn't until 10 years later that I wrote a single word. In 2015, I was gifted a special book, Terlinayo. It translates into Can You Hear Us? An oral history of the Korean survivors compiled by, this is a mouthful, the Commission on Verification and Support for the Victims of Forced Mobilization under Japanese Colonialism in Korea. It took me a year to read these 12 harrowing narratives. Many times I had to put the book down. So an important side note here, because I have a dark sense of humor. If you ever decide to write about violence against women, think about it at least 10 times, because you might regret going down that rabbit hole. And then you're going to spend hours and hours and years actually researching, and you could be crying through the entire process, and also be prepared to spend almost a year writing what will amount to only 4 finished chapters because of the aforementioned crying. Anyway, for a long time, as a doctor mired in facts and statistics, I thought I didn't have the imagination to write a novel. But weirdly, I needed fiction to tell the truth about comfort women. By the way, that's not what the survivors wish to be called. But unfortunately, this unfortunate, awful misnomer has stuck and is used as a shorthand for the hundreds of thousands of victims of sexual slavery by Japan. They were not really women, they were girls. Most were teenagers at the time they were trafficked, and some were as young as 9 and 10 years old. Only through fiction could I imagine the life of a single victim, her family, her friends, and her community. Stone Angels illuminates a dark, little-known corner of World War II history, but it also contains the stories of women and the intricate relationships between mothers and daughters, sisters and wives. And at the heart of my novel is a love story, a nod to Jane Austen's Persuasion. A wildly romantic story about second chances, I think. Frederick Wentworth has the best lines in literature. Quote, "You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope." Total swoon. Dare not say that man forgets sooner the woman, that his love has an earlier death. I have loved none but you. Another side note. I read all 6 of Austen's completed novels every decade of my life, and I've been doing that since I was 20 years old. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was reading Pride and Prejudice to try to restore my faith in the world again. So the problem was I'd never written a love story, but I thought, how hard can it be? Foolish question. The formula is the same, right? I mean, girl meets boy, girl falls in love with boy, some kind of misunderstanding ensues, but eventually girl ends up with boy, or girl ends up with girl, or boy ends up with boy. You get my meaning? But it felt impossible for me to concoct a romantic yet witty and grounded in reality kind of love story. And my history of reading dime store romances for hours as a teenager was wholly unhelpful. Neither the Harlequin romances, which I'd bought at the Woolworths of my youth for 99 cents, nor the period romances of Barbara Cartland with titles like The Ruthless Rake or The Elusive Earl, which I love, by the way, gave me any guidance in creating depth to characters, complexity in narrative, or humor in dialogue. In desperation, I turned to Austen. You know what they say. Good writers borrow, great writers steal. But then I ran into another obstacle. Angelina Lee, my central character, based loosely on Anne Elliot from Persuasion, was acting in surprising ways. And I'm the author, for God's sake. I know it's perplexing when authors talk this way. Aren't you the one writing the story? Is probably the question you have for me. Yes, but characters do unexpected things, even to their authors. And Angelina wouldn't choose the man that I thought she would end up with. The man I thought was Frederick Wentworth. This conundrum, which by the way went on for months, finally led to my aha moment. My novel would not be faithful to Persuasion, and it would contain multiple characters from all 6 Austen novels. For instance, Yoon, the fisherman from Jeju Island in my novel, is a doppelganger for Colonel Brandon from Sense and Sensibility. Angelina's sisters are iterations of Catherine Morland from Northanger Abbey, Lydia Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, and Lucy Steele from Sense and Sensibility. There's even a character called Emma from Emma, and Henry Crawford from Mansfield Park, and Mr. Elton from Emma inspire 2 dastardly characters in my novel. I truly believe that if it were not for Jane Austen, and also me watching hours and hours of romantic Korean dramas, which, by the way, juxtapose tragedy and comedy in surprising and delightful ways, and are far more complicated than people give them credit for, I would not have been able to write the complex love stories for Angelina, Kongju, and Sonya, the 3 women who are the soul of my novel. Another fun fact, Our Blues is my favorite Korean drama of all time. At least up until this point, it could all change tomorrow. Another fun fact, there's a scene in my novel where the character Kongju is on a deserted pier and she is weeping in a rainstorm. And this came to me as a flash of an image with of all things, musical accompaniment. I heard the song Destiny Sonata, which is part of the original soundtrack of Fated to Love You, a K-drama. In my head, I heard this. And because that image and music kept haunting me, I had to write a whole chapter to figure out what it meant. Who knew Jane Austen and Korean dramas would be so important? So in closing, I'd like to leave you with this. Stone Angels is my version of Pachinko meets Persuasion, with its themes of migration and diaspora, culture and identity, a slice of very painful history, a precious second chance at love, and last but not least, women trying to navigate the beauty and brutality of their lives. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Virginia Stanley from HarperCollins. Good to see you all. This is great. I have the honor of introducing our next speaker, Lynn Steger-Strong, as she's the author of the novels Flight, Want, and Hold Still. She was born and raised in Stuart, Florida, and now is a Brooklynite, a mother of two, and the writer of a beautiful Substack called Practicing. She's taught writing at Pratt, Fairfield University, Catapult, and Columbia University, where she received her MFA in fiction. And she was the visiting fiction writer at Bates College in 2023. She also hosts her own seminars on novel writing. Alumni of her workshops have sold 7 novels and counting to major publishers. Her nonfiction has appeared in the New York Times, Time, Harper's Bazaar, the LA Times, the Paris Review, The Cut, New York Magazine, and on. Her next book, it's coming out in April 2025, is The Float Test. It's a sophisticated and layered novel about sisters, betrayal, love, and climate change. Welcome, Lynn Stager Strong.
I feel like we should have opened with Clay because I'm going to be a little more somber or something. Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to tell you a couple of stories. I didn't write anything, but I thought I'd tell you some stories. The first has to do with you all, and partially will inform some of what I talk about later, which is to say over the past couple of years, because of a lot of things in the world, our family's moved around a ton. And our older daughter, who's the one we worry about or used to worry about, because she struggles a lot socially, we had just moved to a new place and we were in Maine, and I had this weird, complicated battle with her middle school because she wanted to sit on the stairs during recess and read, but they told her she was banned from the stairs, and I had to go in and fight for access to the stairs because she just wanted to sit and read, and she got sort of overwhelmed by school, right? So she needed the quiet and she needed to sit. Anyways, I had to have a lot of meetings, and then I had to sit down and talk with her about why they were banning her from the stairs. And I said, trying to be understanding, they want you to make friends. And she was like, oh no, I have friends. And I was like, okay, good. And I thought she was talking about characters in books, and she said Abigail and Lindsay, and I said, who are Abigail and Lindsay? And she said they're the librarians at the library across the street from the school. And every day after school she walked over there, and a few months later I had a book come out, and I got to meet Abigail and Lindsay, and they just kept saying to me, we're so honored to meet Izzy's mom. I've never felt so famous in my life to be Izzy's mom, because they loved her so much, and they were really her friends, and especially for a kid who doesn't have a lot of friends. There's a difference between being inside of books and being able to talk to people about books. And actually yesterday, I'm a teacher, and it felt like such a gift to be able to talk to people about books. And that's what librarians do. And thank you so much for that. It's a really big deal. And it means a lot to me. And, if you have kids, it means even more when it means something to your kids. So my book, speaking of moving, during COVID, in the tradition of COVID, or not for everybody, my husband got laid off. I don't know if you heard, but New York is really hard. We left kind of in a confusing, uncomfortable way. We moved in with his parents, who had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, with our 2 kids in South Florida, where both of us grew up. In a way that I hope we can all cling to. It felt awful to have to do it, and then it was amazing. My mother-in-law is amazing. One of my favorite people on earth. She made me cake every single day. She took care of our kids. It felt like community. She's an immigrant. She kept calling us her COVID immigrants. She was so happy to have us. And also this sort of other thing happened, which is I'm from Florida. My husband's from Florida. You've heard about Florida. It gets a really bad rep, but it's also one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And it was really cool, actually. So the cover of this book is a painting by my mother-in-law. And no one in this world that I know loves Florida as much as my mother-in-law. She's a landscape painter. And so she took my kids and I around, and she re-taught us the beauty of this place that I've known my entire life, that I hold in my body, but also that sort of the world has taught me I'm supposed to kind of not like very much. But fuck if I love it, sorry. Like I love it. And it felt so special to get to teach my kids to love it. So now I'm going to briefly bring up Shakespeare. This just came to me, but it's connected, I promise. So through all of the tumult, a few weeks ago, there was a hurricane, and I was reading King Lear, which is maybe my favorite play. Not particularly new idea for an English teacher. But there's this moment in Lear where Gloucester, we have a working idea. Gloucester has everybody has a hard time in Shakespeare. Almost everybody dies at the end. But Gloucester gets his eyes gouged out. Yes, he gets his eyes gouged out. And then Lear and Cordelia, who are like on his side, they lose the war. And so Gloucester says this, he wants to give up. He says he wants to sit in the rot and he wants to die. And then Edgar, who's his son, who's my favorite character because he's funny at the beginning, and funny in tragedy is really important. He says no, but ripeness is all. He says ripeness exists too. Like you can sit in the rot or you can go find the ripeness. And then Gloucester says, and that's true too. And so I think that what I'm interested in as a writer is always, and that's true too, right? For everything that we love, there's also hate inside of it because maybe people are destroying what we hate. And for everything we hate, which again, I think for a long time I was like, Florida, stop. I also really love it. And so I wrote this book about the disparity of that love and hate and how most of us, and that's true too, right? Like most of us hold both things in them at the same time. The other thing that happened to help me with the book was, and it's connected to, and that's too true, and it's connected to the magic that is my mother-in-law. She always says I need to write about, like, make an argument for mothers-in-law just generally in the world, which I'm working on for her. Actually, my last book, Flight, if anybody read that, she said she killed me, but it was worth it because the mother-in-law is really nice. It was not her, but so anyways, what was I saying? So the one other thing, and that's true too, that made me realize I had to write this book is there were these tons of vultures. So I would sit outside at night. Again, I was like, Florida, I want to feel Florida on my skin. My poor husband, I refused to shower. I would go swim in the ocean at night, and then I would come home and I would just be like, I want the salt, and he would get itchy and mad at me. But I would sit outside a lot and just look at the sky because again, it was COVID, and there were these tons and tons of vultures in the sky. And I said to my mother-in-law, I said, that's creepy. They're vultures. And she said, they're starving. She said, there's so many vultures because there's so much development that they're hungry. And again, I said I'm like the depressing one, but it felt like one of those moments of, and that's true too. And so I wanted to write a book about a woman who's obsessed with the vultures. And then in that, one of those sort of magic things that I think starts to happen when you're starting to write a book, Faulkner is one of my favorite writers. And I found this interview with him in which he said that when he dies and comes back, he wants to come back as a buzzard, which is what a vulture is, because they don't need anything. And I thought that was really interesting. And I was like, no, but Faulkner, that sounds like death. Like we do need things. What we need is other people. And so I wrote a book about a woman who is obsessed with vultures, whereas actually what she ends up realizing that she needs is other humans. I should give you a plot summary too, because that's good. So other things that are important. And I told my sister just read it. I have two sisters. It's a sister love story, I think. It's a story about four siblings. One of them's a writer and nobody likes her. And so the person who's telling the story is the little sister of that writer. And she's telling the story of the summer in which their mother died, and the sister, who is the writer, got a gun. And the gun is in part because I used to teach this class called domestic fiction. And we all talked about how the writer, the person telling the story, seems like they don't have power, right? It's often the sort of quiet observer in the background. But then we got to the end of every novel and we would be like, oh yeah, but they got to tell the story. And that is a huge power. And so the writer doesn't get to tell the story in this book, but the writer does have a gun. And so I'm sort of interested in the ways that, again, we hurt each other both on purpose and by accident. Both things are equally as true, but also we need each other. So that's what my book, now I'm going to look at my notes to see if one more thing. again, I don't know if I did a good job of telling you about the book, but I have this, so one of my favorite writers, sorry, a lot of writers, but who's also my boss at Princeton. I teach at Princeton now, which I should name if only to shout out the beauty and brilliance of the Princeton Public Library, which is one of the most magical places I've ever been. Even like my students come up to me and are like, isn't that a great library? You know, and they're like 19. I mean, they're fancy, but they're 19. I have one on my left. But so Ian Lee wrote this piece about how aboutness is bad. We're not supposed to talk about aboutness. So I'm not going to talk about aboutness. What she talks about is this idea that when you're inside of a book, and God, like this is all I want right now, right? When you're inside of a book, what you get is an experience. Right? It's not about aboutness. So the experience that I wanted to give with this book, which I was particularly interested in the ways that like families hold secrets that nobody else knows. And then you sit down with your friend and she's like, let me tell you about my sister. Right? And she knows everything about her sister. And so the feeling that I wanted to give you was in college, I wrote a book. No one published it. I got it bound as a manuscript. And in the middle of the night, because this was a sort of strange college kid that I was, I drove over to my best friend's house and we had this practice of climbing into one another's windows and leaving one another gifts. We were cool. I got this book bound and I drove over to her house in the middle of the night when I knew she was asleep and I dropped it on her desk because it held inside of it so many things that felt true to me that I was too scared, even though she was my best friend, to give it to her in the light of day. But also it felt really, really important to me that she read it. So I climbed through her window and I offered it to her. And insofar as there's something I want this book to feel like, that's what I want this book to feel like. I want it to feel like something that someone snuck into your room in the middle of the night and is both really, really true and really, really scary. And also maybe like filled with how much we need one another. So thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I really love librarians. And yeah, I hope you guys like it. Have a good day.
Our next presenter wanted to be here so much, that she came today from the great state of Michigan. Please say hello to Golda Rademacher of W.W. Norton and Company.
Can't believe you guys are clapping that much. I haven't done an in-person book buzz in a while, and I'm kind of surprisingly nervous. So hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you all in person. I'm Golda Rademacher. I'm the Library Sales and Marketing Director for Norton. We also distribute several other independent publishers, so I have a few of their books in my presentation today as well. And my handout is the one with the little seagull on top. So first up is Super Bloom by Nicholas Carr. His book, The Shallows, became a classic look at how technology and the internet affect your brain. In Super Bloom, he explores how social media has warped our sense of self and society. He guides readers through a history of the pitfalls of technological innovation, how telegrams sometimes hindered diplomacy, why radio became the perfect tool of authoritarianism, how the Facebook feed ushered in a new era of manipulation, and how AI now blurs reality and fantasy. He uses vivid examples from history, science, and politics to revolutionize our understanding of how media shaped society. So it may be too late to curb the super bloom of information, but it's not too late to change how we react to it. Mona Acts Out. This just got a starred review from Publishers Weekly. Celebrated stage actress Mona Zahid wakes up on Thanksgiving morning to the clamor of guests packed into her Manhattan apartment and to a wave of dread. Her in-laws are lurking on the other side of the bedroom door. She's still fighting with her husband, and in just a few weeks, she will begin rehearsals as Shakespeare's Cleopatra, the hardest role in theater. Mona escapes the apartment and spends the day on a quest that turns into a reflection on her past. PW said, Mona's thoughts are laced with scathing humor and piercing insight into the actor's craft, resulting in a surprisingly moving exploration of the courage required to play life's many roles. Berlinski deserves a standing ovation for this bravura performance, end quote. So give this to your fans of Where'd You Go, Bernadette, Les, and Fleischman is in Trouble. The Naming of the Birds is the second book in the Cutter and Bliss historical mystery series from Tin House. The first book, The House on Vesper Sands, was a library reads pick, and it got a ton of great reviews. The new book has a bit of a feminist revenge story, along with complicated people making difficult decisions in the name of justice. And there is some love for libraries and archives. You'll want to give this to any of your fans of historical mysteries and Gothic stories. Pro Bono is the new thriller by Thomas Perry. In this one, we have a tenacious attorney grappling with a dangerous group of thieves and trying to figure out how this all relates to a crime from his past. Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito has this amazing cover. Her first book, Mrs. March, was a library reads pick. This one is even darker. Winifred Naughty is the unapologetic serial killer of your nightmares. This is like a combination of a Victorian Gothic with horror, with some female rage, and a little bit of sardonic wit to balance out the psychopathic main character. I won't spoil anything, but the book does say right at the beginning that soon everyone in the household will be dead. You guys, it's dark. So movie rights have been sold, and Margaret Qualley has been booked to play Winifred. And then we have another dark book, Beta Vulgaris, which is a debut novel by Margie Sarsfield. This is socially conscious horror with some morbid humor. A young woman and her boyfriend take a seasonal job working on the sugar beet harvest in Minnesota, and things take a turn. Elise starts noticing strange things, threatening phone calls, a mysterious rash, and snatches of an ominous voice coming from the beet pile. By the end, the novel gives surreal shape to the real, pressing, and relatable anxieties of work, class, and money. You can't kill a man because of the books he reads. This is the story of a young Black Communist Party organizer wrongly convicted of attempting to incite insurrection and the landmark case that made him a civil rights hero. In 1932, 18-year-old Angelo Herndon was arrested and had his room illegally searched and his radical literature seized. Charged under an old slave insurrection statute, Herndon was convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to 18 to 20 years on a chain gang. Brad Snyder tells the stories of the diverse coalition of people who rallied to his cause and who twice appealed his case to the U.S. Supreme Court. They forced the court to recognize free speech and peaceable assembly as essential rights in a democracy, a landmark decision in 1930s America as well as today. So you remember Russell Shorto from his bestseller, The Island at the Center of the World. He is back to writing about New York City history in Taking Manhattan. This new work shows how the paradox of New York's origins, boundless opportunity coupled with subjugation and displacement, reflect America's promise and failure to this day. Russell Shorto has combed through newly translated sources to offer a vibrant tale and a fresh and trenchant argument about American beginnings. Merle Oberon was the first performer of color to receive an acting nomination at the Academy Awards, but nobody knew it because she always concealed her South Asian identity. In Love, Queenie, Mayuk Sen draws on family interviews and previously untapped archival research to describe the star's hard-won journey to fame. From an upbringing in poverty, she rose to be Hollywood elite during a racially exclusionary golden age. A major biography of an often overlooked talent, Love, Queenie empathetically captures one woman's story while illuminating truths on race, gender, and power that still resonate today. So Lydia Millett is back with a new story collection called The Atavists, coming next April. Each story is about an ist, from futurists to insurrectionists to cosmetologists. The stories follow characters in their collisions, confessions, and conflicts in a post-pandemic America of artificially lush lawns, beauty salons, tech bro mansions, assisted living facilities, big box stores, college campuses, and medieval role-playing festivals. Altogether, it is a fast-moving, heartbreaking collection that evokes the joy and alienation between generations and classes in an era of mass overwhelm. So maybe you were surprised that Norton is doing horror. Well, now you can be surprised that Norton is doing science fiction. I was reading this on the plane on Tuesday. So Terrestrial History is a family saga following 4 generations on a time-bending journey from coastal Scotland to a colony on Mars. What if you could come back to the past and somehow change it with technology? Joe Mungo Reed explores that question in an immersive story of hope, hubris, and sacrifice in the face of a frighteningly precarious present. The Ephemera Collector is an epic Afrofuturist debut in which an archivist finds herself the target of a violent plot and must rely on the help of her AI assistive technologies. Zandria Brown works at the Huntington Library, Art Museum, and Botanical Gardens, and when the library unexpectedly goes into lockdown, Zandria must rely on her adaptive technology and her own flickering intuition to preserve her life's work. And then from Harvard University Press, I have Super Gay Poems. The title kind of speaks for itself. A major poet and literary critic leads an aesthetic adventure through poems about queer experience, all by writers who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, trans, non-binary, gender fluid, and more. The poems in this anthology represent the great variety of queer and trans life, and each piece is paired with a concise, eye-opening essay by Stephanie Burt. We have 3 new Norton shorts coming out in the winter: The Moral Circle, What's Real About Race, and Fewer Rules, Better People. Each of these books delivers bold thinking and provocative arguments in under 200 pages, perfect for students and for adults who want to learn about something interesting in a short amount of time. And then we have a great batch of cookbooks coming out from Norton and our distributed publishers this fall. There's even more winter 2025 highlights. And then here is my email address, and this library marketing link will take you to a page which has links to subscribe to our newsletter. Every month in the Norton Library newsletter, I do an ARC giveaway, so that's a great place to go to get print ARCs. And then we also have digital ARCs on Edelweiss and NetGalley. And thank you all.
Hello, everyone. I am Amanda Cromarco with Macmillan Publishers, and I'm here with my colleague Margot McCoy, and we are excited to tell you guys about some upcoming books.
All right. I'm going to start us off with Things Left Unsaid by Sarah Jafari. This book follows 2 old friends who bump into each other at a house party after they were pulled apart by painful events a decade prior. They're determined to hold tightly to each other, but life often has other plans. Will it be different this time, or are the 2 destined to fall apart again? It's a dazzling exploration of healing, finding your place in the world, the lasting power of love for fans of Mame, Olga Dies Dreaming, and Normal People. Okay, and next up is My Best Friend's Honeymoon by none other than Meryl Wilsner. When a woman decides that her impending wedding isn't what she wants anymore, she cancels it and hops on a plane with her best friend instead to go on her non-refundable honeymoon. But when her friend makes her a deal and choosing activities turns into toe-curling kisses, what happens when the trip ends? We love Meryl, and this is their first book with us that features a non-binary main character. All right, and next up is What Will People Think by Sarah Hamden. This follows a woman who by night performs at New York City comedy clubs. But when she's inspired to take some risks, her stand-up gets a bit better and a spotlight exposes her secret gig. She dives into damage control to protect her reserved Palestinian-American family, only to expose a family scandal from the 1940s. This debut perfectly blends a love story with family drama and a journey of personal growth and explores identity, heritage, and societal issues. All right. Next up is We Live Here Now by Sarah Pinborough. This is about a couple that moves to a beautiful country house, but to the wife, something feels wrong. Old boards creak at night and books fall from the shelves, and the wife feels a terrible presence. But these things only happen when she's alone and her husband doesn't notice anything. As bizarre events pile up and her marriage crumbles, she becomes obsessed with discovering the truth about the house. But if the house has secrets, so do her and her husband. This is great for haunted house fans and readers of Stephen King, Shirley Jackson, and Riley Sager. All right, next up is Harmattan Season by Tochi Onyebuchi. When a bleeding woman stumbles onto a man's doorway as the Harmattan rolls into the city and then immediately vanishes, he reluctantly finds himself entangled in the secrets of a city boiling on the brink of violence. This is Onyebuchi's gripping standalone fantasy noir that reads like Raymond Chandler meets P. Jelly Clark in a post-colonial West Africa. Okay, and then we have Park Avenue by Renee Adier. When a brand new junior partner is asked to sit in on a meeting, she's shocked to find out that the client is one of the most famous Korean families in the world. The family is worth $1 billion, but the family fortune and legacy are at risk. It's up to her to make things right, separate truth from lies, and secure her own success. With an anonymous narrator, bad billionaires, luxurious settings, and a jaw-dropping reveal, Renee's adult debut is for fans of Crazy Rich Asians and Succession. And then we have So Happy Together by Olivia Worley. This is for fans of You and Promising Young Woman, and it follows a woman who, after getting dumped after only 5 dates, becomes obsessed with getting a guy back. His new girlfriend does not have what it takes to love him like she could, and she's ready to prove it. This is Olivia Worley's debut into the adult fiction world and a twisty suspense novel filled with lies, secrets, and murder. And then we have Finding Grace by Loretta Rothschild. After a shocking tragedy changes his family forever, a man running from his past falls in love with a woman, all while keeping a secret that could threaten their burgeoning romance. This is a sweeping romance that explores what happens when a shared past collides with an unexpected future. With a gripping plot, elegant prose, and a unique POV, it's a heart-wrenching story of moral dilemmas and ethical questions. It's perfect for fans of Jodi Picoult, Leanne Moriarty, and The Paper Palace.
Okay, The Accidental Favorite by Fran Littlewood is a wryly resonant and deeply moving family dramedy about what happens after a father unintentionally reveals that he has a favorite daughter. Decades-old unresolved sibling rivalries are suddenly unmasked and no one's secrets are safe. This book falls perfectly into the messy girl trend where their bad habits and chaotic desires are on full display for readers. Sunny Side Up by Katie Storino is a heartwarming and hilarious debut novel from body acceptance advocate and Mega Babe founder that's going to be perfect for fans of Emily Henry and Sex and the City. It follows a woman on the verge of a meltdown in the Bergdorf Goodman swimsuit department dressing room, but realizes that rock bottom is the perfect place to start a climb. I would hand this to anyone looking for a confident and outgoing plus-size main character, or anyone who loves summer in the city. Never the Roses by Jennifer K. Lambert. Genevieve Gornichek's The Witch's Heart meets Madeline Miller's Circe in this romantasy about enemy sorcerers who risk their lives and their freedom as they struggle with the impact of war in their souls and their ever-growing feelings for each other. This is an open pen name for Jackie Kennedy, who already has a ton of fans in the romance genre, and will be perfect for anyone who loves the sizzle of rivals to lovers. Another book I'm so excited about, The Enchanted Greenhouse by Sarah Beth Durst. This is the author of the #1 Library Reads pick and bestseller, The Spell Shop. And here she returns with another delightfully cozy romantasy about a librarian longing for connection, a timid gardener, and a mystery to unveil on a faraway island that is brimming with singing flowers, honey cakes, and honeyed love. It is a standalone, though readers of The Spell Shop will appreciate a fun little crossover with the characters. And I would hand this to TJ Klune and Legends and Lattes fans, as well as anyone in their cozy cottagecore era. Greenwich by Kate Broad. This debut is absolute book club catnip, especially for any Connecticut librarians in the crowd. It's about a young woman visiting her aunt and uncle in Greenwich when a tragic accident occurs. And since she's the only one that knows what really happened, she is going to have to make a pivotal choice. This book explores the nature of desire and complicity against the backdrop of immense wealth and privilege and the ways that whiteness and power protect their own. Ink Ribbon Red by Alex Pavesi. This is Knives Out meets Saltburn in a wickedly plotted thriller where a group of friends are playing a deadly game that has each of them imagine a scenario where one friend kills another and then writes it down as a short story. So when you're doing that, it's only natural to use what you know, so secrets, grudges, and affairs.
But once it's in the story, that secret is out. So this book has stories within stories, the kind of meta mystery with red herrings and unreliable narrators galore. Savvy Summers and the Sweet Potato Crimes by Sandra Jackson Opoku nestle into the world of Chicago soul food with this cozy mystery full of unforgettable characters, witty dialogue, and unexpected twists. This book won the 2023 Minotaur Books Mouse Domestic Best First Traditional Mystery Novel competition. And while it is the author's first mystery book, she has earned many awards and honors for various other projects during her lifetime, including the ALA Black Caucus Award. A couple of nonfiction. So Gay for You. Kate Monig and Leisha Haley, stars of The L Word, share an intimate, hilarious memoir of art, friendship, queerness, and found family, including never before shared stories and photos from behind the scenes of the show and their personal lives. Murder in the Dollhouse is for all your true crime readers out there, and comes a gripping story of status, wealth, love, and hate, with the chilling story of Jennifer Dulos, who was a beautiful, rich suburban mother who dropped her kids off at New Canaan Country School one morning in the midst of an ugly divorce and vanished. So this book dives into the origins and motivations of a crime that has become a national obsession. And lastly, I have a couple of big books that won't require too much information, but we're very excited about them. Flashlight by Susan Choi. This is the author of the National Book Award winning Trust Exercise, and she is back with a family story driven by a mystery, a book about the impact of global politics on individual lives, a tender and moving portrait of the many ways that families are lost. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, the author of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, returns with a new genre-defying, unforgettable novel to sink your teeth into. And if that was too subtle, it is about vampires, and I'm writing it right now, and I love it so much. The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, everyone's favorite gritty fantasy author, returns with an epic tale featuring a notorious band of anti-heroes on a delightfully bloody and raucous journey, where holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds. And then lastly, The Doorman by Chris Pavoni, for anyone who's walked around New York City and wondered what kind of crazy stuff a doorman might see as he watches over celebrities, financiers, and the cultural elite in a city poised to boil over. And that is it from us today. Thank you again so much for hanging out with us, and let us know if you have any questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Celia. I am the library marketing manager. Oh, wait, I got to start my watch. I will know. I'm Celia. Today I'll be presenting some titles from some really fantastic small publishers that we distribute over at Ingram Publisher Services. I will get to my titles in just a moment, but the first thing I just want to say is how proud and happy I am to work with so many wonderful independent presses, especially right now. I just feel really lucky to see the transformative and cutting edge work that our publishers do up close, and to work with businesses that prioritize the values of community, of empathy, and of progress. They are a necessary force in an industry that can be quite risk adverse and traditional, and frankly, sometimes punishing. But I will get into my books. Keep an eye on this little ant. It will reappear. It will all come together. Okay. I know there's already fans of these books in the room, so I won't dwell on them too long. Scythe and Sparrow is the third in the Ruinous Love trilogy. These are the super dark, super, can I say horny in this room? Romance novels that people on TikTok have just gone crazy for. This is the third and the final one in this trilogy, but there is more from Bryn coming. Caught Up is also a hugely popular trilogy of romance novels that has done quite well on TikTok. This one is about voyeurism and is an opposites attract kind of romance. Less dark, slightly less, spicy. Beautiful Disasters. This is a queer romance about two women in New Orleans. This is from Bywater Books. Bywater is one of my fave publishers. They have been publishing queer lesbian romance for 20 years. That is long before we had queer romances on Netflix. It is long before gay marriage was legalized in the United States. So it's really a pleasure to see them continue to publish exciting and sexy romance. Only for the Week is about two kind of high-profile Black professionals. They're at a wedding between her sister and her ex-boyfriend. And so as kind of to release some of the tension of
of being there, she starts a fling with a groomsman that she promises will only last for the week they're at the wedding. I'm sure you can guess how well that goes. And because this is romance and it's November, I had to have one Christmassy one, The Mistletoe Mix-Up. Cody Hall is a beloved kind of Christmas romance writer, and this is a kind of second chance romance between two exes. If you like Hallmark movies. Okay, my next titles are crime and thrillers. Beartooth is one I'm pretty excited about. This is a crime adventure story. It is set in the brutal wilderness of the Yellowstone National Park. Two brothers who are recovering from the loss of their father are down on their luck. They're struggling to survive both because of the economic and the social demands in their life. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next when this strange drifter approaches with a strange bargain. They decide whether or not they're going to go along with them. Really highly recommend for people who are interested in this part of the West. And again, it's just a really interesting story about American masculinity. Faith of Their Fathers. This is a great one for fans of Ken Follett. It's set in medieval Iceland. This is a time period where there is a growing Christian minority amongst a pagan majority, and there is a series of murders that will threaten to have a disruptive effect in this very small community. The ramifications of these crimes and how they are resolved will have effects not just in this Icelandic community, but in the history of crime and punishment in the West. This is a work of fiction, but the author is a very serious historian, so it's very authentic, but it's not boring or stodgy or textbooky. It's really riveting, exciting drama for anyone who just likes deep world building, whether or not this is like a time period that you're super into. It's a very richly told story. These are two procedurals. What Doesn't Kill Us is about a cop who is dealing with this kind of Jack the Ripper serial killer. She realizes that her fellow police officers are not going to be able to solve this man who is slaying women in the streets of 70s London. So she teams up with this rather militant feminist collective, and they join forces to take down this common enemy. The Best Enemy is part of a series of the Veronica Rosenthal novels. So this one works as just, if you want to get into the series or you just want a good standalone crime novel, it is about a journalist who has two colleagues that are murdered. It's meant to look like a burglary, but they've been investigating a pretty serious corruption scandal. And so she starts to wonder if maybe there is something else afoot. Oh, and then I have some really wonderful horror novels for you. This is a genre that I see someone smiling. This is a genre that it's really exciting for me to see kind of the growth and development of. We have a lot of publishers who've really been on the cutting edge of transformative horror, and getting to see like the diversity in this genre is just really, really exciting. So Hungerstone, which is a vampire story. It is a retelling of Carmilla, which is the first vampire novel. It does predate Dracula, technically, but it's about a female vampire, and this is kind of a contemporary retelling that reimagines this forbidden queer kind of romance, kind of one woman wants to eat the other one. Can be romantic, and resets it in a different time. And then Freak's Law, I think that's probably one of the best titles that we have. It is set in a carnival. It is a group of vengeful, strange carnies who travel from town to town. They end up in this very uptight, conservative Scottish village, and it's here where they will enact all of their vengeance and all of their anger at being kind of kept on the fringe of society. If you're a fan of Angela Carter, if you loved Geek Love from years ago, this is a great one to check out. Other wonderful horror, I Can Fix Her. This is a really great breakup story. This is a new title from Clash Books. Again, they're one of these publishers that has just thrived in this new genre of multimedia horror books. They've had a bunch of stuff go viral on TikTok. They did Everything the Darkness Eats, if you remember that kind of viral sensation on Twitter a few years ago. But this is a story about a breakup. It's about a couple that has ended horribly, and yet they are drawn to each other. The world is literally falling apart at the seams as they get closer and closer, but they are too stubborn to admit that perhaps that is a sign from the universe that they should stay away. And then Sundown from Santajuela. This is a fantasy, gothic, spaghetti western hybrid genre. It's a debut novel from M.M. Olivas. This is kind of in the vein of like Mexican Gothic or Isabel Canas. It is a wonderful, rich, Latin-infused horror novel about a young medium who has sworn she will never go back to her horrible, dusty hometown, and then she is forced to return. And while there, she uncovers more secrets of her own clairvoyance and some of the strange things that happened in her past. And then my last two horror novels, hot singles in your area. If you can't see, that's like a tin of eyeballs. This is a gross, gooey body horror about two office drones who get caught in the web of this multimedia empire. And then The Sleeping Land. If you loved Rachel Kushner's new novel, Creation Lake, or you're a fan of Ghost Wall, I would recommend this one. It is about a group of archaeologists who uncover some secrets of the past that perhaps are not as past as they thought while on a dig in like recent post-Cold War Soviet Union. And then my last two books, you'll see The Ant is Back. These are great book club ones. They're a little bit more literary. These are international titles, but they are thought-provoking and really compelling. The Voices of Adriana is a wild piece of metafiction. It's about a grad student whose father has recently started online dating very obsessively, and then she becomes obsessed with it, and it becomes this kind of crazy nightmare. Two Lines published Woodworm, which was a National Book Award longlist. I can't promise this one will also get longlisted for the National Book Award, but you never know. And then finally, The Colony. This is a huge hit out of Sweden. It is like the biggest literary phenomenon since The Man Called Ove. There is a Netflix movie or series coming out already, a television adaptation as the book kind of spreads internationally, but it is about Emily, who is taking a break from her toilsome office job, and then she discovers this alternative kind of cult, kind of small community called The Colony, this group of misfits, and she starts to wonder if maybe there is an alternative to kind of the humdrum life in an office. And that is all of my books. Yes, please. I don't have galleys, but I do have a handout with my name. If you would like any of the books that I mentioned today, or a book from the previous author, or a book from the publisher, please email me. I am more than happy to connect you with the publisher and even arrange an author visit if that's possible. Next, I think we have Ivy from Quirk.
Hello, it's me again. I'm Ivy Weir. I'm the Senior Publicity and Marketing Manager at Quirk Books. And something that is cool today is that I've seen people here who I met back when I was a librarian in the Philly suburbs. And that's been very heartwarming and something I needed. All right. I'm going to kick it off with horror for weenies. You may be familiar with author Emily C. Hughes. She was the former editor of Unbound Worlds and TornNightFire.com and writes the horror newsletter Jump Scares. Think of this as your crash course in the horror movie canon from Psycho to Hereditary for people who love to get the reference but hate being scared. So if you're somebody who needs to like read the Wikipedia of a horror movie so you can talk to your friends about it, or maybe you're like, oh, I'm just on my phone in this scene for no reason, not because I'm scared, this is the book for you. It is funny. It is smart. You may have seen it in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. And I can't recommend it enough. Emily is also a wonderful virtual or in-person guest for your library and has done several library events already. Cult Following by J.W. Ocker. Some of you may know J.W. Ocker's previous books with us here at Quirk, Cursed Objects or The United States of Cryptids. Joining those two is another beautifully designed, beautiful to look at book, this time covering all of the most infamous, audacious, and dangerous cults in history. Ocker is something of a weird historian. He has spoken at places like the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts. He's a really interesting guy. And in this, he takes the perspective not on the leaders of the cults, which is how these things are usually treated, but instead on the followers and what drew them to the cults in the first place. So this covers cults from across history and the globe, including things that you may have seen in recent documentaries like NXIVM. Revisionaries. This is such a librarian book. I feel like this is absolutely the audience for it. What we can learn from the lost, unfinished, and just plain bad work of great writers. So 20 literary superstars are profiled here as award-winning author and English professor Christopher Jansma shares their discarded drafts, false starts, abandoned projects, and just plain old hot garbage drafts. And you'll find people in here like Franz Kafka, Octavia Butler, who I learned from this book had writer's block for 7 years at one point. Deeply relatable. Fitzgerald, Louisa May Alcott, and more. This is a really inspiring and motivating book for you or your patrons who want to write and look at their drafts and go, well, I'm going to yeet myself out the window in sticks. This is so bad. This one is really fun and really interesting. Chris got access to some things that have never really been shared before. Here's one we all need today. Tiny pep talks. Bite-sized encouragement for life's annoying, stressful, and flat-out lousy moments. This got a wonderful review from Library Journal, which we are very appreciative of. So anyone can give you a pep talk before something really big in your life, like you're about to go to a job interview or walk down the aisle. But what if you have to call and schedule an appointment? Comedians, podcasters, and creators of the No Wrong Answers card game, Paula Skaggs and Josh Linden, are here for you, and they have created this pocket-sized hype man to help you tackle things like sending a scary email or parallel parking. We're all bad at things. This is truly such a ray of sunshine, and I think would vastly improve anyone's day at this exact moment. You Gotta Eat. Real life strategies for feeding yourself when cooking sounds impossible. I don't know who here has seen that meme that's like, too late for dinner, 30 to 40 olives will never disappoint you. You don't have to eat 30 to 40 olives with You Gotta Eat. A trained chef and deputy food editor of the Philadelphia Inquirer, Margaret Eby, gives you part cookbook, part pep talk, and part action plan, offering tips and tactics plus 10 do exactly this recipes, making effortless food that's nourishing, tasty, and even fun. So what I love about this book is it's kind of arranged by energy level. So it's like, do you have the energy to open a can? Do you have the energy to chop an onion? We all need it sometimes. I feel like, especially as we head into the holiday season and hosting and all of that, this is a great fit. We're also really glad that Forbes Vetted named it one of their best cookbooks of fall 2024, as did Simply Recipes, and it was featured on NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour. Taylor Swift by the book. So it's become kind of common knowledge that Taylor Swift is really bookish and has become sort of a literary icon in her own right. Colleges are teaching classes on her canon. She is often photographed reading. She talks about reading in books. And so this gives Swifties the ability to learn about all the literary references that Taylor makes from Shakespeare to Fitzgerald and beyond, and covers her entire catalog, including the Tortured Poets department. This is co-written by English professor and author of the highly praised The Darcy Myth, Rachel Fader, along with musical theater artist Tiffany Tatro, who, fun little fact, is her sister-in-law. This is a beautifully illustrated guide through the literary eras of Dr. Swift. Yes, she has an honorary PhD. I gave you a couple little sneak peeks in here. Got another lovely review from Kirkus as well. Exploring all of the literary themes addressed by Taylor in each of her different eras. It also has fun extras like playlists and reading lists, and is a great pick for literature nerds, Swifties, or anyone in the middle of that Venn diagram. I don't know if you guys caught that Clay was here earlier. I know he's very subtle and quiet. But wake up and open your eyes. Clay sold it better than I ever could, but this has gotten praise from just about every horror author on earth, it feels like, who read an advanced copy. Jordan Peele liked it, as Clay said. Booklist gave it a starred review. And if you have readers who are fans of possession horror or survival shows like The Last of Us or the Argentinian horror movie When Evil Lurks, this is a great fit for them. It truly is unlike anything I've ever read, even from Clay, and I've worked with Clay for many years now. Death in the Downline. This is a really fun one. It's multi-level murder, in this darkly funny murder mystery set in the glamorous world of multi-level marketing, or MLMs. You may have watched documentaries like Lula Rich or Betting on Zero. So did author Maria Abrams, and she decided to really do a deep dive into this very strange world of downlines, girls' trips, and sometimes murder. When journalist Drew returns to her hometown, having lost her job and been freshly dumped, she reconnects with one of her former best friends and gets drawn into the world of multi-level marketing scheme Luminous and its downlines, sales parties, and girls' trips. But when a Luminous distributor ends up dead under mysterious circumstances, Drew needs to uncover the dark secret at the heart of the organization and save her best friend before it's too late. This one is really fun, propulsive, quick read, but it also has like a really smart core of things to say about American hustle culture and our desire to do more, and be perfect. So that's me. Keep in touch. I was an extremely silly goose and did not put my handouts in the box of ARCs that came here. So there are these gorgeous QR codes. Thank you, whoever set those up, so you can reach our Edelweiss catalog, but you can also email me anytime. I love, as I said, I used to be a librarian, so I love spoiling you guys. You want bookmarks, you want ARCs, reach out. All right, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Got it. I'm Rudy Martinez. Thank you so much. From Soho Press. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for our organizers for putting this on. This is really great. Love being here. So I'm going to talk about titles from our 3 adult imprints, Soho Press, Soho Crime, and Hell's 100. So I'm going to start with Soho Press. The first title I have is Orome by Balu Gurma. This is the first English translation of Balu Gurma's landmark Amharic language masterwork. It tells the story of a journalist named Sige, who's taken a position as the head of propaganda for a campaign led by the Ethiopian regime against a regional insurgency. But the more he sees of this brutal campaign, the more he feels betrayed by the government that he's chosen to serve. When this book was first published in 1983, it was a sensation. It was quickly banned for its lightly veiled critique of the Ethiopian government in power at the time. And shortly after that, Girma was disappeared. This novel speaks directly to our moment for so many reasons. Girma is telling a story about the horrors of war, the power of books to challenge corrupt institutions and regimes, and the ever-present danger faced by people who dare write those books. Orome, Balu Girma. Counting Backwards, the new novel from Binny Kirschenbaum, who's the author of Rabbits for Food. Like so many of Binny's novels, Counting Backwards is a bitingly funny, deeply human story that draws inspiration from her own life, in this case, her experience of losing her husband to Lewy body dementia. This novel follows a married couple, Leo, a 53-year-old medical researcher, and Addie, a collage artist. Leo's illness begins with hallucinations, which the pair sort of treat as a little bit of an inside joke between them. They have a little bit of fun with it, but it progresses to an inability to perform simple tasks. The jokes fade away, and Leo is eventually diagnosed with Lewy body disease, which has a life expectancy of between 3 and 20 years. As Leo moves from their home to care facilities, we witness his decline. We witness Addie's growing despair, anger, and guilt as she loses her husband. This is really, admittedly, tough material, but what makes Binny so brilliant is that she's able to capture despair, loneliness, humor, and pain, and some of the darkest moments in a life, and she does it with honesty, real humor. She's very, very funny when she's writing about these things, irreverence and specificity. Binny is truly one of the most talented writers on our list, and I hope you'll check out Counting Backwards. Next up is ASL by Lambda Award-winning author for trans fiction, Jean Thornton. So one thread of this novel follows Lilith, Sash, and Abraxa, 3 queer teenagers in 1998 who are meeting online and working to build a video game, the Saga of the Sorceress, that they believe is going to be nothing short of revolutionary, not only within the world of games, but in the actual world. 20 years later, the game is long since abandoned. Lilith is an out trans woman working in the very cis world of a tiny Manhattan bank. Sash lives in Brooklyn and works as a cam dominatrix, and Abraxa is sleeping on the floor of a friend's Jersey City apartment. These 3 people who had found each other in the virtual world and changed each other in so many ways before their friendship fell apart are now so close to one another in the real world without even knowing it. Their lives are their own, but their fates and their stories are tied to the sorceress, and her saga is not complete. This is one of my favorite books from our 2025 list in its entirety. It touches on so many things: the otherworldliness of being a teenager, mourning and yearning lost friendships, and nostalgia for the promise of an unspoiled internet. This one's for readers of Tori Peters, Gabrielle Zevin, and Jennifer Egan. That's ASL by Jean Thornton. Next is Bronstein and the Brox, a surprising, playful bit of historical fiction from the legendary spy writer Robert Littell about Leon Trotsky's 10 weeks in New York just before the 1917 revolution. It's a vibrant, funny characterization of Trotsky, peppered with speeches, arguments, affairs, internal monologuing, digressions that all add up to a richly detailed portrait of one of recent history's most important thinkers. This is a passion project from Littell, and it is accompanied by a 14-book backlist acquisition and reissue of some of his most iconic spy novels that we're going to be putting out in 25 and 26 from our Soho Crime imprint. If you're a spy fiction fan and you aren't familiar with his work, I would recommend that you start with a book called The Amateur, which we'll be putting out first in the beginning of next year. So next I'm going to switch to our crime imprint. First book that I have for you is Saint of the Narrow Street by William Boyle. This is a sweeping decade-spanning crime story that begins in 1986 in South Brooklyn, where we meet Risa, who's in the midst of a frightening, violent dispute with her husband, Severio, that ends with her hitting him in the head with a pan and killing him. With the help of her sister and a trusted friend, she makes the fateful decision to hide his body and share the news with the neighborhood that he's run away with another woman. The three of them are bonded by that choice, and they spend years trying to forget what they've done. But Severio has a brother, and he's just as unpredictable and hot-tempered as Sav, and 15 years later, he's walked into Risa's life looking for answers about what happened to his brother. William Boyle has made a career writing carefully observed, deeply felt portraits of South Brooklyn and the people who live there, and this is truly his opus. It is a tense, fast-paced crime story with complex, flawed, precisely rendered characters. This one's for readers of Dennis Lehane, Willie Vlotton, and Lou Berney. Next is an exciting debut mystery set in Pakistan, The Museum Detective by Maha Khan Phillips. The story opens with Dr. Gul Dalani, a curator at the premier historical museum in Pakistan, being woken up by a call from the police, summoning her to assist with a crime scene hours away in the remote desert. It seems odd to her that they would need an archaeologist to assist with what she's been told is a drug bust, until an officer leads her into a cave and to a sarcophagus containing a mummy. As Gull and her team of unlikely academic misfits turned investigators search for the truth, she finds herself drawn into a sprawling conspiracy, tied directly to her own search for a long missing family member. Recommend this one for fans of Sue Grafton, Sujata Massey, Laurie King, and Kate Atkinson. That's The Museum Detective. Last on the crime list, we have Broken Fields by Marcy Rendon. This is a new mystery in her Cash Black Bear series, which is set in the Red River Valley in Minnesota in the 1970s. The series follows a young Ojibwe woman named Cash, who often finds herself as a de facto investigator for crimes committed in her community. In Broken Fields, she's looking into the murder of a native field worker whose daughter may have witnessed his killing, but she's too traumatized to speak. It's a spectacular introduction to Marcy's issues-forward mystery storytelling that highlights the lives of people from the White Earth Nation. This is the fourth in a series that just gets better and better, and I hope you'll check out Broken Fields. The last title I have for you is from our Hell's 100 horror imprint. This is The Butcher's Daughter by writing duo David Demchuk and Corinne Lee Clark. This is a brooding, jet black Victorian horror novel set in the 1880s, told in letters between a woman confined to a convent named Margaret Evans and a young journalist, Emily Gibson. Miss Gibson believes that she's corresponding with none other than Mrs. Lovett, the infamous accomplice to the demon barber Sweeney Todd, who baked men into pies. But the story Margaret Evans tells in her letters is an unexpected one. It's the story of a young woman, a butcher's daughter, held captive by a maniacal doctor, a forbidden love, a stolen child, and sweet bloody vengeance. David is a veteran horror author who you may know from his debut novel X. Corinne is a writer of deeply researched Victorian historical fiction. This is truly a match made in hell.
And any horror fans, Victorian enthusiasts, lovers of reclamations or reframings of so-called villains are going to want to pick this one up. I dropped some handouts on all the tables. I got here a little late, my apologies. But if you don't have one, there are more at the back. And yeah, everything's on NetGalley and Edelweiss. My email's on the handouts and on all these slides. Email me if you want some. Thanks, y'all.
Good job, Rudy. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. We love that you're all here today. We're excited to have this back in person. It's been too long, and we're all sick of Zoom, as I'm sure most of you are too. So, from Penguin Random House Library Marketing, obviously we have 10 minutes. So we're just doing a couple of titles, but we'll give you some other resources where you can check out more of our great books that we have coming up. We hope you will all join us, as I know most of you normally do, for our next Book and Author Festival, which will be on December 10th. We love our Book and Author Festival. We get to bring you a whole bunch of authors all in one day, lots of giveaways, arcs, and sneak peeks at what is going to be coming out in spring of 2025. So we hope you will join us for our next festival. So far, we have on the docket for that day, Charmaine Wilkerson, Martha Hall Kelly, one of my personal favorites, Katie Kiddamore, Ron Curie, and William Boyle from Soho. So we're excited for the festival. We also hope you will join the Penguin Random House Editors Picks webinar, which is next week on November 14th. This is another great way for you to hear directly from some of the editors, Doubleday, Crown, Riverhead, and Del Rey, about some of the titles coming out in spring of 2025, and the information is on your handout. And LibraryCon Live, which is November 14th also, is always a fun, great day to hear about all the upcoming graphic novel, manga, and fandom titles. And we have the closing keynote speaker, David F. Walker and Marcus Kwame Anderson, as they talk about Big Jim and the White Boy. We're excited to have them as our speakers at LibraryCon Live, and we hope you will join us for that as well. Right to the titles. And one more thing to let you know, if you go on our website, where we have a title URL here, where we have our spring catalogs that we started putting together for you. And that will be a way better sampling of what we're talking about today, of the great titles we have coming out for spring. Today, we'll just give you a sneak peek of some of those, but if you look closely at our catalogs online, you'll see what else we've got coming up. All right, so this is the first one I'm talking about is a very fun title, Eliza Kennedy's Lucky Night, for readers of Fleischman is in Trouble, and one of those books about marriage that people love to read. So there's two secret lovers in a luxurious hotel in Manhattan. What could possibly go wrong? Well, they're married to other people, but tonight, after 6 years of casual sex, finally this couple decides to get a hotel room together and spend some time together. But what could go wrong? The hotel starts to burn down. So as a fire rages below them, they are forced to confront the lies they've told their spouses, each other, and themselves. It's an edge-of-your-seat, witty, sharply observed novel, perfect for book clubs, starring Nick Holloway, a 46-year-old, picture of success, aren't they all? Successful partner at a law firm, gorgeous wife, everything he could possibly want, but also has gnawing disappointments, secret yearnings, and a creeping sense of opportunities wasted. Well, that's nobody's fault but his own. And then there's Jenny Parrish, 40 years old, beautiful, of course, 2 sons, YA novelist, great life, and they see each other around town casually for 6 years, but this one night they decide to spend together and it all comes tumbling down, literally and figuratively. It's a unique mix of humor and midlife malaise with an explosive ticking clock. It examines themes that clearly resonate with readers of intelligent, smart, funny literary fiction, and like I said, perfect for book clubs and lots to discuss. Next up is Audition. This is from the author of Separation and Intimacies, One Woman, the Performance of a Lifetime, or Two. A mesmerizing Mobius strip of a novel that takes place, that asks who we are to the people we love. 2 people meet for lunch in a Manhattan restaurant. She's an elegant and accomplished actress in rehearsals for an upcoming premiere. He's attractive, troubling, and young enough to be her son. Who is he to her, and who is she to him? In this compulsively readable, brilliantly constructed novel, 2 competing narratives unspool, rewriting our understanding of the roles we play every day, partner, parent, creator, muse, and the truths every performance masks, especially from those who think they know us best. Like Trust, Audition is a tightly wrought literary novel with an unforgettable, take-your-breath-away twist in the middle that will set readers buzzing, and we're so excited about this novel. Whenever there's like a twist in the middle of a novel, no matter how many books I read, I literally never see it coming, and this one's pretty amazing. Like, did anybody ever read The Last Mrs. Parrish? It was so good I wasn't even expecting a twist, and ever since then I thought, I'm going to look for the twist now every time I read a book. Still never get it. All right. Changing gears, sadly. Hate to even talk about this one, but this is for readers of Empire of Pain and Bad Blood. And I know for some reason we all love reading about the dark side of things. And this is No More Tears, The Dark Secrets of Johnson & Johnson, an explosive, deeply reported expose of Johnson & Johnson, one of America's oldest and most trusted pharmaceutical companies, from an award-winning investigative journalist. But he wasn't looking to tell this story. He was a reporter from the New York Times, was early for a flight, and sat down at an airport bar. He struck up a conversation with the woman on the bar stool next to him, who happened to be a drug sales rep for Johnson & Johnson. Her horrific story about unethical sales practices and devastating impact that they had on her family fundamentally changed the nature of how Harris would cover the company and the entire pharmaceutical industry for the Times. His subsequent investigation and ongoing research since that very first conversation led to this book, a blistering expose of a trusted American institution and the largest healthcare conglomerate in the world. Filled with shocking and infuriating but utterly necessary revelations, No More Tears is a landmark work of investigative journalism that lays bare the deeply rooted corruption behind the images of babies bathing with a smile. Oh, sorry. Bringing it down. The Pretender, a novel by Joe Harkin. This is a sweeping historical novel in the vein of Hilary Mantel and Maggie O'Farrell, set during the times of the Tudors' ascent. The Pretender tells the story of Lambert Simnel, who was raised in obscurity as a peasant boy to protect his safety, believed to be the heir to the throne occupied by Richard III, and briefly crowned at the age of 10 as King Edward VI, one of the last Plantagenets. In 1480, John Collins' greatest anxiety was how to circumvent the village's devilish goat on his way to collect water. But the arrival of a well-dressed stranger from London upended his life forever. John is not John Collin, not the son of Will Collin, but the son of the long-deceased Duke of Clarence, and has been hidden in the countryside after a brotherly rift over the crown, and because Richard III has a habit of disappearing his nephews. Removed from his humble origins, sent to Oxford to be educated in a manner befitting the throne's rightful heir, John is put into play by his masters, learning the rules of etiquette in Burgundy and the machinations of the court in Ireland, where he encounters Joan, the delightfully strong-willed and manipulative daughter of his Irish patrons, a girl imbued with both extraordinary political savvy and occasional murderous tendencies. I love that. Joan has two paths available to her: marry or become a nun. Lambert's choices are similarly stark. He will either become king or die in battle. Together, they form an alliance that will change the fate of the English monarchy. For readers of Hamnet, also perfect for book clubs. We're also really excited to bring to you from one of our distribution partners, Counterpoint, The Lilac People. We believe this will be a really big read for spring 2025 for fans of like John Boyne and All the Light We Cannot See, and In Memoriam. It's a moving and deeply humane story about a trans man who must relinquish the freedoms of pre-war Berlin to survive the Nazis, then the Allies, while protecting the ones he loves. We're in 1932 Berlin, and Bertie is a trans man and his friends, and he spend carefree nights at the El Dorado Club, the epicenter of Berlin's thriving queer community. An employee of the renowned Dr. Mangus Hirschfeld at the Institute of Sexual Science, Bertie works to improve queer rights in Germany and beyond. But everything changes when Hitler rises to power. The Institute is raided, the El Dorado is shuttered, and the queer people are rounded up. Bertie barely escapes with his girlfriend Sophie to a nearby farm. There they take on the identities of an elderly couple and live for more than a decade in isolation. In the final days of the war, with their freedom in sight, Bertie and Sophie find a young trans man collapsed on their property, still dressed in Holocaust prison clothes. They vow to protect him, not from the Nazis, but from the Allied forces who are arresting queer prisoners while liberating the rest of the country. Ironically, as the Allies' vice grip closes on Bertie and his family, their only salvation becomes fleeing to the United States. Brimming with hope, resilience, and the enduring power of community, The Lilac People tells the extraordinary story inspired by real events and recovers a very untalked about portion of trans history. And like I said, it's for readers of great historical fiction like John Boyne, Martha Hall Kelly, Amor Towles, and Garrett Conley. Thank you very much. Thanks again for coming.
All righty. Hello. You made it to the end. What a day, right? Wasn't it wonderful? So I'm Margaret Coffey from Sourcebooks, but before we get into that, we have a lot of people to thank. So I just want to thank our wonderful panel who put this together. That's Chris and Emily, Melissa and Annie for welcoming us here into the Hachette building. To Kelly, who you just heard from, and Celia, who are also part of putting this together. And to Miriam for PRH, who's going to cut me off because I'm taking all my presentation time making the thank yous. And because you won't hear me at the end because you're going to go and get up. So everybody gets tote bag. I know what you're all sticking around for. It's stuffed with galleys. So what we're going to do when I'm finished is if you would line up here, facing in that direction. The tote bags are in the closet. Nobody getting up now. No one gets anybody early. And if you want to kind of, feed into that line from these aisles, that will work well. Truly, truly, everybody will get a tote bag. There's nothing to worry about. If you, for some reason, have made it this far and haven't gone to the bathroom and you want to go on the way out, those are kind of directly behind us. So with all of that said, okay, now I'm going to tell you about a few titles. If you get a chance, go visit our website. We have assets like book club guides, discussion guides, activity kits. We have a newsletter that you might like to sign up for. We have galleys that are available in every kind of DRC that you can imagine from both Edelweiss and from NetGalley. And I am going to start with a few titles from our fiction list. From a seat at a bar, Nicholas Butler overheard a conversation from a couple that seemed on the verge of their last chance. Unable to shake their mesmerizing and intriguing story from his imagination, he brought it to life in a 40-year kiss. Butler is internationally best-selling author of shotgun love songs, and his new book is a rugged feel-good Valentine, a small-town novel for readers who still believe in sunset triumph and second chances. Charlie and Vivian were married for 4 years and then divorced for 40. But something gradually draws Charlie to move back to Wisconsin, where Vivian still lives. A brave exploration of starting over and finding home, A 40-Year Kiss explores what Vivian and Charlie must learn to forgive, rebuild, and eventually find a home in each other. Many of you may remember The Winter Sea and Firebird from New York Times and USA Today bestselling author Susanna Kearsley. I will tell you she was one of my absolute positive favorite authors on our list. Susanna's a meticulous researcher. It takes her years to put new books together, and she primarily writes about the history of England and Scotland in the 1600s and 1700s. Her new book, The King's Messenger, explores an ordinary man in service to a treacherous king, and the mission that brings him to love and his true calling. In 1613, King James I sends his messenger, Andrew Logan, to Scotland, accompanied by his aloof neighbor, Phoebe, who begins to see how honorable and desirable Andrew really is as they track down the one person who may know what killed Prince Henry, the heir to the throne. The big question is, did the king, his father, have a hand in his murder? Babylonia is for readers of Circe and Clytemnestra. This book is an epic novel of love, death, and betrayal following Queen Semiramis, the only female ruler of the Assyrian Empire, and the famous love triangle that ultimately led her to defy the odds and claim a throne that was never supposed to be hers. Nothing about her upbringing could have foretold her legacy or the power she would come to wield. Born from a fallen woman, scorned by Aphrodite, she was an orphan on the outskirts of an empire. Certainly no one in ancient Assyria would bend to her command willingly. In this myth-based series, author Constanza Casati, who wrote the best-selling Clytemnestra, unpacks the story of a powerful queen, one often remembered as a temptress, a homewrecker, and a harlot, as so many famous women in history often are. From Christina McMorris, the New York Times bestselling author of Sold on a Monday and The Ways We Hide, comes The Girls of Good Fortune. Guys, I love this book. I love, love, love this book. It's the story of one woman's journey through Portland's Chinatown and its infamous Shanghai tunnels. Christina gives voice to those in the shadows in a spellbinding story of a young half-Chinese mother and her determination to forge a future for her daughter in a world that shuns outsiders. Portland, 1888. Amid the subterranean labyrinth of the notorious Shanghai tunnels, a woman awakens in an underground cell, drugged and disguised. Celia soon realizes she's a Shanghai victim on the verge of being shipped off for forced labor, leaving behind those she loves most. As she pieces together the twisting path that led her to her abduction, from serving as a maid for the family of a dubious mayor to becoming entwined in a horrific gold miners' massacre, Celia must find a way to escape and return to a place where unearthed secrets can prove deadlier than the dark recesses of Chinatown. And now moving over to Poison Pen Press and a couple of mysteries. No source book presentation would be complete these days without mentioning a new book by Frida McFadden, our mystery thriller author phenom, whose books are consistently on the bestseller list. In The Crash, a pregnant young woman running from her past crashes her car during a storm and is taken in by an older couple. Anybody ever read Stephen King's Misery? Having skidded off the road, Tegan's ankle is broken. Stranded and terrified, she's taken in by a good Samaritan living in a remote farmhouse. But it soon becomes clear these strangers are harboring secrets and have ulterior motives. The nightmare Tegan is running from is nothing compared to where she's landed. From the #1 international bestselling author of True Crime Story comes Imposter Syndrome, a gripping and suspenseful new novel about Lynch, a con artist who, when mistaken for being a missing man, gets drawn into the lavish London underbelly of greed and corruption and must take the unique skills he's learned through a life of lying, cheating, stealing, people watching, and try and change his ways. Sometimes bad people must decide to do good. And now 2 nonfiction titles. Beloved bestselling children's author Marianne Richmond has written her first adult book, If You Were My Daughter, a compelling and poignant memoir about growing up with misdiagnosed epilepsy. 9-year-old Marianne desperately hopes for help and healing, but her emotionally unavailable mother refuses medication on her behalf, preferring to try prayer and homeopathy. Finally, at age 18, a full-body seizure leads to a diagnosis, medication, and the subsequent discovery and removal of a benign brain tumor. Physically on the road to healing, Marianne finds that the mother gap is much harder to fill. Her decades-long search to be seen inspired her to write for others what she longed for herself. When her mother is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, Marianne has a choice to make. Will she be present for the mother who rarely felt present for her? Nathan Carman was found floating on a raft in the North Atlantic and was later accused of murdering his mother to gain access to the family's fortune. A troubled young man, a multi-million-dollar fortune, and a murder at sea are all central to Blood in the Water from New York Times bestselling author Casey Sherman. His gripping contemporary true crime narrative set in New England has something for every reader fascinated by the Murdaugh murders and family dynamics so deadly the body count continues to rise. I think we could probably all use a little happily ever after at this point. Story of My Life launches a brand new small town romance series from #1 New York Times bestseller Lucy Score. Romance novelist Hazel Hart seeks to overcome her writer's block by leaving the big city to buy a house, sight unseen, in Story Lake, Pennsylvania. She arrives in town and makes a huge first impression by crashing her car into the town's welcome sign. Lucy Score is at the top of her game with this new book coming in March 2025. Hazel finds inspiration in the totally hot and, of course, grumpy contractor who agrees to renovate her new house, only to see if he can speed her departure from Story Lake. Scarlett St. Clair meets Outlander in the seductive and spellbinding world of Towerfall, a new tarot-inspired fantasy series from New York Times bestselling author Kristen Cast. He's a ruthless, battle-scarred warrior with a dark past, and she's pretending to be his obedient wife to save a fantasy kingdom. This high-heat, fake marriage romantasy has a morally gray love interest and a happily ever after. What could possibly go wrong? We have several new titles from fan favorite Katie Robert. It's Laura Olympus meets Helen Hart in Sweet Obsession, the 8th installment of the Dark Olympus series from the New York Times bestselling sexy modern day deconstruction of our favorite Greek myths. Icarus may not have flown particularly close to the sun, but he has fallen right into the rough hands of Olympus's own Poseidon. Being held captive by the quiet giant wouldn't be so bad if Olympus wasn't in the process of falling all around them. Poseidon will have to make a difficult choice about himself, his allegiances, and about the man who woke his heart from its long slumber, only to threaten to break it for good. And also from Katie, a Wicked Pursuits and Divine Intervention flip book. In Wicked Pursuits, Katie takes readers off the safe path with a modern spin on Little Red Riding Hood, while in Divine Intervention, rising star R.M. Virtues explores spicy choices and consequences in his take on Goldilocks. This is the first in a series of 3 exciting, spicy modern fairy tale duologies, and they are set in upstate New York. And finally, if that wasn't enough romance for you, we have scores of other titles coming from Anna Wong, Scarlett St. Clair, Penny Reed, Elsie Silver, and Elle Kennedy, among others. Thank you again for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.